Chapter 1849, New World Gate. Guild Leader, don't tell me we're supposed to fight that boss. Is that really a mythic monster? The Flame Demon King was a 50-meter tall giant. Every one of its movements stirred up a storm in the sea of fire around it. Zero Wing's team could tell how terrifying this monster was just by looking at it. When he saw the Flame Demon King, Kola, who had brimmed with confidence, felt his scalp tingle. This boss could likely even slay a 1,000-man team of level 80 Tier 2 experts. Compared to the mythic monsters they've encountered thus far, the Flame Demon King was on an entirely different level. Could the new expansion pack I triggered have made the Flame Demon King stronger? Shifeng pondered as he looked at the Flame Demon King. The more he thought about it, the more his theory seemed plausible. After all, the Flame Demon's Valley was only a level 70+ map. It wasn't a level 100+ map. An ancient fiend shouldn't be here. An ancient fiend was an elemental creature that had fully unlocked its bloodline and reverted to its ancestral form. Although ancient fiends were no match for dragons in terms of life rating, they were fully capable of rivaling ferocious beasts. Even an expert team that was 20 levels higher wouldn't be a match for a mythic-ranked ancient fiend, much less an expert team of the same level. In addition, the Flame Demon King had a world boss's special ability. Not even a 100-man team of level 100 Tier 3 players could defeat this monster. There's no helping it, I can only adjust my plans. Following which, Shifeng addressed his team. I had thought that I could complete this quest and get everyone out of here safely, but that's no longer possible. I'll have to ask you all to sacrifice yourselves to lure the Flame Demon King away from its territory. Try to buy as much time for me as possible. Violet, you won't be joining the fight. I need you to hide in the distance. Once the battle is over, you'll be responsible for resurrecting the team. All he could do now was lure the Flame Demon King away from the World Gate. The players that would be responsible for buying time would die, but with the resurrection skill he had given Violet Cloud, they could reduce the death penalty his teammates suffered. I understand. Violet Cloud nodded. None of his teammates had any objections to Shifeng's proposal. They were the guild's main force members. Their weapons, equipment, and levels had been granted by their guild. It wasn't unusual to die for their guild's benefit very quickly. The team followed Shifeng's instructions. Kola would be the first player responsible for attracting the Flame Demon King's attention and luring it to the designated area. After Kola died, Turtledove and Wumian would take over. Once all 3 MTs had died, the rest of the team would split up and flee, forcing the Flame Demon King to waste as much time as possible chasing them down. Move out. Shifeng commanded once he was in position a short distance away from the valley's entrance. Following his orders, Kola charged into the flaming valley. Shortly after he had set foot in the sea of fire, a deafening roar echoed from the valley's center. Little human, you dare trespass in the Flame Demon King Minakoland's territory? I'll show you just how frightening fire's anger is. As the voice faded, the Flame Demon King emerged from the raging flames, its movements causing waves of fire that washed over Kola. Not daring to be careless, Kola immediately activated Power of Darkness and hid behind Titan Guard. Boom! As the firestorm slammed into him, Kola stumbled 3 steps backward, a damage exceeding -20,000 appearing above his head. So strong. Just its movements caused such a powerful attack. Aqua Rose, who watched from afar, could not help her shock when she saw Kola lose 1/8 of his HP despite his active berserk skill. Normally, Kola could face a level 70 mythic monster head-on after activating his berserk skill, yet he had just lost so much HP after an indirect attack from the Flame Demon King. The team's other members paled when they saw this. If they had received that indirect attack, they would have likely lost over 50% of their HP. They felt like ants before this world boss. As the Flame Demon King's frightening strength stunned Zero Wings players, the boss had arrived before Kola. The Flame Demon King then thrust its trident at the Guardian Knight with so much speed that the attack had been invisible to the naked eye. Fortunately, Kola had already raised Titan Guard and blocked the attack in time. After blocking the attack, however, Kola had lost all feeling in his arms. Like a cannonball, he had been thrown back, only stopping as he crashed into a massive boulder. Kola's HP instantly fell by over 80,000, more than half of his total. The team was stunned. Just one attack had left Cola so miserable. The gap in strength was despairing. "Heal him quickly," Shifeng shouted through the team chat. The outcome didn't surprise him. After all, their opponent was a mythic-ranked ancient fiend. If not for the fragmented legendary ranked Titan Guard, Cola might have died instantly. Upon hearing Shifeng's command, the Tier 2 healers snapped out of their daze and cast healing spells on Cola, instantly restoring the Guardian Knight's HP to 70%. However, the Flame Demon King was already stabbing its trident at Cola again, the weapon releasing white-hot fire. The white-hot flames shocked Cola. Hurriedly, he activated Protection Blessing. After its upgrade to Tier 2, Protection Blessing reduced the damage he took by 60%. However, when the trident met Cola's shield, the stone under his feet shattered, forming a crater. Meanwhile, Cola's HP fell by more than 60,000, dropping his HP into the red. By the time the Flame Demon King executed another attack, the team's healers only recovered Cola's HP to 50% of his total. Realizing how precarious his situation was, Cola used Titan's Heart, forming 3 layers of protective energy, which could absorb up to 10 times his maximum HP around him. With Titan's Heart in effect, Cola quickly fled the Sea of Fire. Seeing Cola pull away from the valley, Shifeng breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had upgraded Titan Guard to the fragmented legendary rank earlier. Otherwise, the 3 MTs wouldn't be able to lure the Flame Demon King away before they died, even if Cola, Turtledove, and Yi Wumian worked together. Afterward, equipping the Flame Demon's crown, Shifeng activated Gale Domain and charged into the flames that could even melt fine iron. As expected of the Flame Demon's crown, it really is wondrously effective. When Shifeng soared through the fire, he only felt a little warm. He wasn't in any pain at all. Due to the additional 200 fire resistance the crown provided, he now had over 400 fire resistance. His HP only fell by a little over 100 each second he remained in the fire. After flying for about 40 seconds, he noticed Cola's name darken among the list of his team members. It was obvious that the Flame Demon King had killed Cola. So quickly? When Shifeng realized that he was still over 200 yards away from the stone gate in the center of the valley, his expression darkened. Cola was the sturdiest player in the team. He had thought that the Guardian Knight alone would be able to buy him enough time to reach the World Gate, but it seemed that the Flame Demon King was much stronger than he had expected. As soon as Shifeng reached the World Gate, he pulled out the Philosopher's Hand and used it to activate the stone doors. At this point, Turtledove had also fallen, and only Yi Wumian remained alive of the team's 3 MTs. "I need to hurry." Shifeng used the Philosopher's Hand's power to repair the broken magic arrays on the World Gate. As he did, a furious roar reached him from outside of the valley. "Despicable trespasser! You dare to open the World Gate!" As the voice faded, a pillar of fire rose from its origin, following which, everyone but Shifeng and Violet Cloud's names went dark. This situation put immense pressure on Shifeng. He pushed himself to work faster. Faster. While Shifeng repaired the World Gate's magic arrays, he could feel the space around him boil. This meant that he was already standing within the Flame Demon King's sphere of influence. The ancient fiend's movement speed had completely exceeded his expectations. "Despicable human! Vanish alongside your sins." When the Flame Demon King caught sight of Shifeng, it threw its flaming trident at the swordsman. However, before the trident could reach Shifeng, he activated the aura of Earth's absolute domain. Yes, it's done. Using the period of invulnerability absolute domain granted him, Shifeng completed the final magic array. Following which he placed a hand on the World Gate's main magic array and said, "Open. World Gate." Chapter 1850 Hidden Reward. With Shifeng's command, the divine runes on the gigantic pair of doors before him began to glow with a purple-gold light. A moment later, the divine runes released a beam of light that threatened to devour the Flame Demon King. No. Upon seeing the beam, the Flame Demon King, who was within 50 yards of Shifeng, turned in a panic and tried to flee. However, the beam of light was much faster than the Flame Demon King. In the blink of an eye, the purple-gold light enveloped the world boss, and the ancient fiend cried out in pain. In the next moment, the Flame Demon King began to shrink, and the flames around its body gradually extinguished. A short moment later, the world gate slowly opened. Some force sucked the valley's fire through the opening gates, and the Flame Demon King began to shrink even faster. From its original height of 50 meters, the Flame Demon King quickly shrunk to 40 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. By the time the world gate was fully open, the black hole within had devoured every last flame in the valley. The Flame Demon King had also been dragged towards the world gate by the black hole's powerful gravity. "No. This is my power," the Flame Demon King shouted, panicking as it used every shred of power to fight the black hole's pull. Seeing this, Shifeng could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. He had no hope against a level 83 mythic-ranked ancient fiend right now. Fortunately, the world gate could remove things that didn't originate from the continent of God's domain. While the world gate had activated, the Philosopher's Hand had also undergone a transformation. The Philosopher's Hand had originally been made of translucent crystal, radiating an ominous feeling. Now, however, not only had the ominous feeling disappeared, but the translucent hand had also transformed into a blood-red bead. What pristine mana! As Shifeng held the blood-red bead, he could feel incredibly pure mana emerge from it. This mana was even purer than that from the 7 luminaries crystals. Suddenly, Shifeng heard the sound of a system notification. "System, congratulations. You have completed the epic-ranked main storyline quest Philosopher's Wish before level 80. Rewarding Philosopher's Hand, plus 40% EXP of current level, 5 legacy skill points, 30 free mastery points, 30,000 subclass proficiency points and 1 subclass dark gold design." When the system notification ended, Shifeng's experience bar rose to 52% of level 68. However, obtaining the complete Philosopher's Hand excited Shifeng far more than the bountiful EXP. This was a bona fide legendary item. Any superpower in God's domain would easily go mad over this. Moreover, Shifeng was surprised by the additional reward for completing the quest before reaching level 80. 5 legacy skill points were no small matter. In addition, the awarded 30,000 subclass proficiency points would save him a lot of time when upgrading his Forger subclass. After reaching the master rank, players would still need a ridiculous number of proficiency points to rise from a basic master to an intermediate master. While ordinary master lifestyle players might not have trouble earning the required proficiency points, it was a different story for Shifeng. Shifeng had many matters he needed to deal with, and he only had a small amount of time to invest in his forging. As a result, he didn't obtain forging proficiency points very quickly. However, the most valuable of the rewards had to be the subclass Dark Gold design. This subclass Dark Gold design wasn't like ordinary designs. Not only could it upgrade a design to Dark Gold rank, but the new design would be a player creation. It was common knowledge that becoming a master lifestyle player was incredibly difficult. Players needed to create completely new items which had to meet certain requirements. To accomplish this feat, players needed a certain understanding of items and materials. This was also the case when players tried to rise from a basic master to an intermediate master. In fact, the promotion to an intermediate master was even more difficult since players would have to create 1 dark gold item or 3 fine gold items. This hurdle had been the end of the line for many basic master lifestyle players during Shifeng's previous life. Although the weakened Flame Demon King was still a world boss, whose ability prevented players from using external tools, it no longer mattered. The Flame Demon King's defense had drastically fallen after all. Now Shifeng's normal attacks dealt over -30,000 damage, while critical hits dealt over -70,000 damage. Even the weakest of his skills inflicted over -100,000 damage. Even when the Flame Demon King used its powerful AoE attacks, Shifeng, who had over 400 fire resistance, only took a little over -3,000 damage from each hit. Due to this benefit, members of 4-star guilds could travel all over the continent to do quests, no longer hindered in their leveling speed and acquirement of resources by competition over a limited number of quests. The only downside to this was the Adventurers Association's tax on players' quest rewards when completing commissioned quests accepted from these designated rest areas. This, in turn, reduced the guild's income from these quests. It also had a skill that allowed its user to summon a Lord-ranked fire familiar, making this pair of gloves perfect for Magicka class players that were not adept in melee combat. After Shifeng was done going through the Flame Demon King's loot, he then took out the Philosopher's Hand from his bag and inspected it, suppressing the excitement in his heart as he looked through its attribute panel. As he needed to deal with the Flame Demon King before, he had not had any time to inspect the fully recovered Philosopher's Hand. Isn't that a flame core? But the fire-type mana in the core is incredibly dense. It's even denser than the flame cores we obtained from Great Lord-ranked flame demons. Looking at the gigantic flame core in Shifeng's hands, Aqua Rose realized a possibility. Doubtfully she asked, "Could it be, Guild Leader? Did you kill the Flame Demon King?" Chapter 1853, Returning to White River City. Looking at the flame core in Shifeng's hand, Kola and the others fell silent, incredulity flashing in their eyes. "Guild Leader, are you for real?" They had all witnessed and experienced the Flame Demon King's might. Only Kola had been able to stand against the boss for any length of time. The rest of the team had been forced to flee to buy their guild leader the time he needed. While they considered the possibility of Shifeng fighting such a boss, they knew that it would only be a matter of time before he died as well. As for Shifeng slaying the Flame Demon King, that was simply impossible. However, the flame core before them was proof of the swordsman's claim. Moreover, the raging inferno that had consumed the valley was gone. Not even a spark remained. For a time they were utterly baffled. "I have killed the Flame Demon King, but only its weakened version," Shifeng explained, smiling. With the explanation, the team could more or less accept the fact that Shifeng had killed the boss. Otherwise, they would have suspected Shifeng of abusing some bug in the game. "Right, Kola, how far are you from level 58 right now?" Shifeng asked as he turned to the MT. "Level 58? After taking a look at his experience bar, Kola said, "After my recent death, I'm 73% away from level 58. "What about you, Summer?" Shifeng asked as he turned to alluring Summer, who wore an exquisite set of light blue robes. "How far are you from level 59? "I'm down to 6% of level 58. I'll need quite a few days before I reach level 59, alluring Summer said. "Guild Leader, what's going on?" Aqua Rose asked, giving Shifeng a strange look. She didn't understand why he suddenly asked about those two's levels. "It's nothing. You two are a little low-leveled right now. Once we return, stop raiding dungeons and come level with me. Violet, you'll join us as well," Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. Now that he had the Scorching Wind set and Sins of Thunderfire set, it would be a waste to let them collect dust. Although the level 70 equipment requirement was quite high, it wasn't a problem without its solutions. Both Kola and Alluring Summer had equipment that reduced items' level requirements, though only by 5 levels. However, he had requirement gemstones which could reduce the level requirements by another 5 levels. Once they equipped the requirement gemstones, Kola and Alluring Summer could wear items that were 10 levels higher than them. Once they donned the set equipment, it would increase the overall strength of the guild's main force by a significant margin. "We're low-leveled?" Alluring Summer blinked in astonishment at her own level. She already had the highest level in the team. Even in an empire, she'd be the undisputed #1 player on the empire's ranking list. However, the comment didn't dampen Alluring Summer's excitement in the least. After all, she was going to level up alongside Shifeng. "Guild Leader, we've rested already. Let's hurry and head back," Kola said impatiently after hearing Shifeng's intentions. Their teammates looked on with a little envy. When leveling up with Shifeng, not only would they rise in levels with astonishing speed, but they'd also improve their combat standards quickly. Following which, everyone used return scrolls to teleport back to White River City. Once they returned, Shifeng had Aqua Rose organize a team to mine the source fire vein, only selecting trustworthy players. He then contacted Melancholic Smile, instructing her to select trustworthy advanced lifestyle players from the Candlelight trading firm for the Philosopher's Hand. These players would be required to sign an extremely strict contract, since containing the secret of the Philosopher's Hand was of the utmost importance. He could not afford for the public to discover its existence. "No." Shifeng shook his head. "We're already limited to a small area. If we reduce that further, our members in Silverwing Town won't be able to level up. Since Blackwater has already declared war against us, then we'll prepare for war as well. Post an announcement on the Orc Empire's forums, stating that Zero Wing will offer the same point system as Blackwater. But Blackwater has too many advantages over us. Even if we establish a similar system, I'm afraid that very few people will side with us, Gentle Snow said worriedly. Relax. I have a surprise for Blackwater, Shifeng said, smiling. Shifeng disconnected the call as the carriage arrived before the Adventurers Association. After alighting from the carriage, he walked into the building, brimming with confidence. Chapter 1854 Promotion to a 4-star Guild. Dark Knight Empire, Light Shadow City, Dark Soul's main headquarters. Zero Wing is quite interesting. I don't know if this guild is brave or overestimates itself. It's provoked so many powers that nobody usually dares to. Not only has Lu Xinglua targeted Zero Wing now, but Blackwater also wants to exterminate the guild, Tiger Breaker said, smiling as he read the report he had just received regarding Blackwater's official declaration of war against Zero Wing. This latest move from Blackwater was particularly vicious. Not only could Blackwater's bounty destroy Zero Wing's members regardless of rank, but the guild would also be able to lure a large number of players to the Crimson Flame Fortress, earning considerable profits. In addition, it would have its pick of peak experts, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Although Zero Wing's foundation was sturdy, Blackwater was on an entirely different level. It wouldn't be long before Zero Wing's economy crumbled. Alliance Master, should we proceed with our original plan? Pathless, the Tier 2 Elementalist, quietly asked from beside Tiger Breaker. Of course. We had only accepted Starlink's commission, but now that Blackwater has joined the fray, not only are we going to proceed with our plan, but we'll also increase the number of participating members, Tiger Breaker said, snorting. We suffered quite a loss at Zero Wing's hands. It's time for Zero Wing to pay back that debt tenfold. Notify every adventurer team and tell them to send their experts to the Or Empire. I'll take command of the operation personally. We'll teach Zero Wing to fear Dark Soul. Understood. Pathless nodded slightly, a hint of excitement flashing in his eyes. Since Dark Soul had grown famous, his and Tiger Breaker's adventurer team, the strongest in the Alliance, had rarely taken action. Normally, they left the toughest commissions to the Dark Hunters and Shadow Claw adventurer teams. White River City, Adventurers Association. As soon as Shifeng entered the building, he noticed players crowding the lobby, chatting about Blackwater and its Crimson Flame Fortress. Blackwater is amazing. It actually captured the Crimson Flame Fortress so quickly. Exploring the Or Empire will be much easier now. I've also heard that the Crimson Flame Fortress can teleport players to any nearby locations like Zero Wing City. We'll be able to avoid the Or's inspection points in the Empire's inner region and reach its core area. That's right. I've heard that the Empire's core area is basically a treasure trove. It has a lot of rare ores and herbs, and the monsters in that area provide far more EXP than in the inner region. If we can get into the Or capital city, we'll have an even greater time. I've heard that the monsters in the regional dungeon have a chance of dropping magic crystals. I've heard that as well. The Or capital city is an extremely rare Azura mode regional dungeon. Moreover, it's a level 50 to level 100 super large-scale regional dungeon. Including the fact that it's in a neutral map, it'll offer far better loot than any regional dungeon available right now. Zero Wing is in trouble this time. Now that Blackwater has made such a vicious move, I'm afraid Zero Wing will struggle to survive in the Or Empire. I've heard that quite a few known and top adventurer teams were doing everything they could to garrison in Silverwing Town, but those that succeeded probably regret their decisions now. When the players in the lobby spoke about the Crimson Flame Fortress, their eyes glowed with excitement and anticipation. When they spoke about Zero Wing, their tone carried disappointment and pity. At this point, nobody had an optimistic view of Zero Wing's chances against Blackwater. After all, the difference between both sides was simply massive. Previously, Zero Wing had held its ground thanks to Silverwing Town, but now that Blackwater had secured the Crimson Flame Fortress, Zero Wing had lost the advantage Silverwing Town granted. News sure spreads quickly. Shifeng revealed a bitter smile when he overheard the conversations around him. It seems Blackwater had prepared to advertise this matter, waiting for the right moment. Blackwater's successful capture of the Crimson Flame Fortress had only been announced recently, yet White River City's public was already talking about it. No matter how he thought about it, this shouldn't be possible. While it wasn't unusual that the various major powers' upper echelons had learned of the situation very quickly, they had intelligence members everywhere, but the same couldn't be said for ordinary players. Most ordinary players only learned about other countries' news through other players. Normally, it took a few hours or even days before White River City's populace would learn of something happening in the Or Empire. Yet as soon as he had received news about the Crimson Flame Fortress from Gentle Snow, the ordinary players in the Adventurers Association were already talking about it. The information had spread too quickly. The only explanation was that Blackwater had sent some of its members to White River City to talk about the news, secretly spreading the word. However, Shifeng did not particularly mind as he headed toward the association's second-floor hall. As Shifeng arrived before the VIP counter on the second-floor hall, he received a call. The caller was none other than Phoenix Rain. Guild leader Black Flame, I've just heard about Blackwater's declaration of war on Zero Wing. As an ally, how can I be of help? Phoenix Rain asked. Zero Wing's development had progressed well lately. Moreover, Zero Wing's naval force continued to grow stronger, assisting her on Thunder Island. This help gave her more leeway. Now that Zero Wing was in such a predicament, she had to pay back the debt she owed. Since Phoenix Pavilion Master has offered, I won't shy away. I've been informed that Blackwater has been quite close with Nine Dragons Emperor recently. I'm guessing that Nine Dragons Emperor helped the guild capture the Crimson Flame Fortress. I hope that you can help me hinder Nine Dragons Emperor as much as possible, Shifeng said, his gratitude obvious in his voice. That won't be a problem. I'll send some people to cause him some trouble. We'll make sure that Nine Dragons Emperor has no time to assist in the Or Empire, Phoenix Rain said, nodding. However, Blackwater and Beast Emperor are still allies. Their combined forces should not be underestimated. I can have Blue Phoenix lead a team of experts to assist you. Although they wouldn't be enough to contend with Blackwater and Beast Emperor's forces, they can deter dark players from participating. That won't be necessary. Blue Phoenix is your capable and trusted aide. She must have a lot to do as well, Shifeng said, chuckling. As for Blackwater, Beast Emperor and the dark players, I have a plan to deal with them. They'll soon learn that Zero Wing shouldn't be trifled with. He knew that Phoenix Rain had her own issues right now. The struggle on Thunder Island was far more troublesome than the struggle in the Or Empire. Every competitor on Thunder Island was a superpower with an extraordinary foundation, and a single misstep could eliminate one from the competition. If Phoenix Rain could prevent Nine Dragons Emperor from joining the fight in the Or Empire, that would be enough. All right. If you need extra funds, you can contact me for help at any time. Phoenix Rain was a little surprised that Shifeng had rejected her goodwill, but it wouldn't be right to insist on sending him reinforcements. After discussing the Dark Corrosion set, Phoenix Rain disconnected the call. Big Sis Rain, how did things go with Zero Wing? Should I lead some of my men over? Blue Phoenix asked curiously. Not at the moment. It seems that Zero Wing has already prepared for this. However, since Blackwater has decided to go all out, I doubt those preparations will last very long. It's best if you are ready to head out at a moment's notice, Phoenix Rain said. I understand. Blue Phoenix nodded. He felt as if Zero Wing was being too stubborn this time. Blackwater had occupied the Iron Empire, and its development speed was ridiculously fast. Even the Great Pavilion Master was awed by Blackwater's success. Blackwater even had more experts than the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion right now. The guild only lacked Domain Realm experts. However, while Blackwater didn't have Domain Realm experts, it had countermeasures for such monstrous players. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to remove the super first-rate guilds that had occupied the empire. Meanwhile, inside a VIP room of White River City's Adventurers Association. Lord Protector, how may I be of service today? An NPC senior administrator asked Shifeng respectfully. I wish to promote Zero Wing to a 4-star guild. Here is the promotion order, Shifeng said. He then retrieved the 4-star guild promotion order and placed it on the table for the senior administrator to inspect. Chapter 1855 Town Level Guild. Promotion to a 4-star guild? That won't be a problem, the NPC senior administrator said as he turned his eyes towards the purple golden token on the table. Once he saw the token, however, a look of surprise flashed across his face as he asked, "Lord Protector, do you really intend to use this advanced 4-star guild promotion order? Is something wrong with it?" Shifeng asked. Although he had noticed that the 4-star guild promotion order he had acquired was a different color than those he had seen in his previous life, it was a 4-star guild promotion order. He hadn't paid it much attention, assuming that the promotion order was slightly different since it had dropped from a world boss. Lord Protector, advanced 4-star guild promotion orders were produced when the Adventurers Association had first established. There are only 22 of these advanced promotion orders in existence scattered across God's Domain's continent. They are considered a trial for adventurer guilds, and the more advanced promotion orders an adventurer guild collects, the higher its status will be, enjoying greater treatment in the Adventurer Association once it becomes a 4-star guild. If an adventurer guild collects 3 advanced 4-star guild promotion orders, it will be treated as a city-state level guild. If an adventurer guild collects 7 advanced promotion orders, it'll be treated as a kingdom level guild. Currently you already have 1 advanced promotion order. If you collect another 2, the Adventurers Association will recognize your guild as a city-state Lord Protector. However, if you promote your guild now, you will lose the opportunity and will have to climb the ranks slowly, starting as a town-level guild. Are you sure that you want to use this advanced 4-star guild promotion order now? After listening to the senior administrator's explanation, Shifeng looked at the purple gold token on the table, a little surprised. So the Adventurers Association has this kind of method to elevate a guild's status. Shifeng understood what the statuses the senior administrator had mentioned represented. Other guilds would only come to learn and value the information after they were promoted to 4-star status. Once guilds reached 4-star status, they'd open a path in the Adventurers Association, gaining a temporary residence in every Adventurers Association across the continent of God's Domain. From then on, members of 4-star guilds' base of operations wouldn't be limited to 1 or a few locations. They could expand their development across the entire continent and use the opportunity to increase the EXP and income they earned. This so-called path meant recognition from the Adventurers Association as an official guild. Official guilds would then be able to engage in adventurer guild work. However, even after becoming an official guild, guilds would receive varying benefits from the Adventurers Association. When a guild first became a 4-star guild, it would be treated as an ordinary level guild. If the guild wished to receive more support from the association, it would have to raise its status. The simplest method of doing so involved upgrading the guild's status from ordinary to town level, city-state level, kingdom level, and finally empire level. Depending on the guild's rank in the Adventurers Association, the guild would have access to different degrees of problems. At the ordinary level, guilds would be commissioned to solve civilian problems. Generally, these problems were similar to large-scale guild quests that required guilds to wipe out some demonic beasts harassing the civilian population. Only they might reward more EXP than ordinary large-scale guild quests. After an adventurer guild reached the town level, the Adventurers Association would acknowledge the guild's ability to solve a town's problems. Commissioned city-state level guilds generally received involved crusades against the dark forces in a particular area. Normally, to rise from ordinary level to city-state level, a guild had to complete a significant number of large-scale guild quests, slowly accumulating prestige in the Adventurers Association. Large-scale guild quests only awarded 3 to 5 prestige points, but becoming a town-level guild required 700 to 1,000 prestige, depending on where the guild's main headquarters was located. The number and quality of large-scale guild quests would differ depending on the size of its NPC city, so the more prosperous the city was, the more prestige a guild needed to increase its rank. "Thank you for the advice, but I have decided to go through with the promotion," Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. The revelation was indeed surprising. After all, just 1 advanced promotion order was enough to promote a guild to town level. Normally, it would take a large guild several years to achieve such a feat as for reaching the city-state levels. Not many large guilds would rise so high within their lifetimes. This was because promotion to the city-state level required a guild to complete a large-scale promotion quest in addition to earning enough prestige. This promotion quest was despairingly difficult. In the past, only a small number of second-rate guilds had completed the quest, yet a guild only needed 3 advanced promotion orders to become a city-state level guild. As for kingdom level, only a small number of first-rate guilds had reached that rank in the past. However, Shifeng didn't have the time to search for more advanced 4-star guild promotion orders. Most importantly, he didn't have a clear idea of where to obtain them. Even if he knew that world bosses dropped them, he wasn't strong enough to hunt those bosses yet. He had only slain the Flame Demon King thanks to his quest. If he tried to raid a mythic-ranked world boss, he'd only be asking for a beating. Since Lord Protector has decided, the processing fees and guild residence reconstruction fees come to a total of 60,000 gold. However, due to your status, we can offer you a discount of 10,000 gold, dropping your total to 50,000 gold, the senior administrator said after making some calculations. 50,000? Doesn't a normal promotion to 4-star status only cost 12,000 gold? Shifeng had already begun to retrieve the money from his bag, but after hearing the total cost he froze with shock. As you are using the advanced 4-star guild promotion order, the promotion will require more work than usual. We also have to notify the various cities' nobles and announce the officialization of the Zero Wing Guild. Hence, the procedural fees are slightly higher, the senior administrator said. How fraudulent. The senior administrator's statement rendered Shifeng speechless. However, when he thought about how Zero Wing would instantly become a town-level guild, he considered the cost relatively low. This was basically spending money to save time. Following which, he obediently took out 50,000 gold and handed it to the NPC. While he had seen to his quest, Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart had paid off the materials they had purchased, earning him another 120,000 gold. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to afford the promotion fees. Once the NPC confirmed Shifeng's payment, a series of system notifications reached Shifeng's ears. Chapter 1856. Shock. Starmoon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming Starmoon Kingdom's first 4-star guild. Rewarding 1 set of intermediate guild defensive magic arrays, 3,000 gold in guild funds and 50,000 guild popularity. Guild emblem upgraded to Mysterious Iron rank. Starmoon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild to own a 4-star guild residence. Rewarding 100 Adventurers Association prestige and 20,000 guild popularity. Guild battle flag upgraded to bronze rank. Upon hearing the system announcements, Starmoon Kingdom's players couldn't help but gasp. I'm not hearing things, am I? Zero Wing actually became a 4-star guild? Zero Wing is amazing. I haven't even heard of a 3-star super guild, yet Zero Wing has already been promoted to a 4-star guild. Zero Wing's members are so lucky. I've heard that joining a 3-star guild will help new players quickly become elites. The Bronze Guild emblem even increases the buffs when you're in a party with other guild members. A 3-star guild receives more high-ranked quests than a 2-star guild too. What kind of benefits will a 4-star guild enjoy? I don't know, but the benefits are definitely going to be better. Moreover, Zero Wing's guild emblem has been upgraded to Mysterious Iron rank. The buffs the emblem provides will be much stronger. Maybe I should try my luck with joining Zero Wing. As expected of Zero Wing, Blackwater has just declared war on the guild, yet Zero Wing has retaliated with such power. Blackwater will likely find Zero Wing a difficult opponent. There's no doubt about that. I just received some insider information from a friend of mine. He just got his Mysterious Iron guild emblem from the guild residence, and he says it's much stronger than before. The bronze emblem only provides 3% more HP and 1% more attack power, but the Mysterious Iron version provides up to 2% to all basic attributes, attack power, defense and EXP gain. As long as 6 or more guild members are within 150 yards, players will enjoy the maximum buff. There's no need to be in the same party. Right. There's also the bronze-ranked guild battle flag. That's basically a treasure for raiding dungeons. As long as you purchase it, you can plant it in a dungeon, and all guild members within 200 yards will receive a 10% increase to all attributes for 5 minutes. After seeing the system announcements, Star Moon Kingdom's independent players engaged in a heated discussion on the official forums. Many players had abandoned the thought of joining Zero Wing after Blackwater's declaration of war, but now that Zero Wing was a 4-star guild, it offered even better benefits. When these independent players learned about these benefits, they began to reconsider their positions. Zero Wing's new benefits were simply too tempting, especially the guild emblem. Previously, the Bronze Guild emblem had offered free teleportation between guild residences and increased attributes when in a party with other guild members. Not only did the Bronze Guild emblem save Zero Wing's members money, but it also made it easier to grind monsters. Now that the guild emblem had been upgraded to Mysterious Iron rank, its effects had more than doubled. Moreover, the guild now had access to the Bronze Guild battle flag. With the battle flag's help, Zero Wing's members would have a much easier time with dungeon bosses. After all, not every player in the game had the opportunity to learn a berserk skill. Meanwhile, the guild battle flag's buff was akin to a mini berserk skill for the entire team. Meanwhile, the various major powers soon learned of Zero Wing's latest promotion. So, this is what Black Flame was talking about. Phoenix Rain could not help but shake her head and smile as she read the latest report regarding Zero Wing. Sure enough, Zero Wing hasn't changed. Snow Scar. Isn't he the #1 berserker of the super first-rate guild Puzzled Star? Falling Fire was also surprised when he saw Snow Scar. Everyone present was no stranger to this name. Puzzled Star was a super first-rate guild that had contended against Blackwater over the Iron Empire. Meanwhile, among Puzzled Star's forces, the berserker named Snow Scar had given Blackwater plenty of headaches. Yet now Snow Scar had actually joined Blackwater. Moreover, he had even become one of Xuanwu Chisha's direct subordinates. This revelation was simply too shocking. Since Zero Wing plans on using the benefits of a 4-star guild to fight a war of attrition with us, let's play along with them, Xuanwu Chisha said as she eyed the map of the Ore Empire displayed at the center of the meeting table. When she looked at the terrain around Silverwing City, the corners of her lips curled up slightly. The Iron Empire has become very boring lately now that no more enemies remain there. Hopefully, Zero Wing can bring me some entertainment. Meanwhile, inside Zero Wing's residence in White River City, the atmosphere was extremely lively. Due to Zero Wing's promotion to 4-star guild, the guild residence in White River City had gotten upgraded into a 4-star residence. The new guild residence was much more majestic than before. The guild hall was now a massive 9-story tall building. Not only were there more private rooms available, but even the first-floor lobby had undergone significant changes. Now, aside from the counter that issued high-ranking quests, there was also a counter operated by the Adventurers Association inside the lobby. This counter allowed players to pick up high-ranking quests that were normally out of reach. Meanwhile, these quests could help Tier 2 players not only quickly raise their reputation in the Adventurers Association but also acquire tons of EXP and remuneration. Guild Leader. Thus far, the number of applicants for the guild test has increased by 50%. Many of our guild's experts have also started forming teams with elite members to raid level 50 team dungeons. I believe it won't be long before our guild elites have level 50 secret silver equipment as well, Aqua Rose reported excitedly. Then we'll be able to dispatch large numbers of well-equipped elite and expert members to Silverwing Town and show Blackwater and those dark players who's boss. Although mainstream players had already reached level 50, due to the sharp decrease in drop rate for level 50 weapons and equipment, players weren't particularly well equipped right now. Let alone elite players, even level 50 plus expert players currently had only a few pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment on them. Excellent. Since so many people in the guild wish to raid level 50 team dungeons, let them prioritize raiding these team dungeons, Shifeng said as he pointed out a few level 50 team dungeons in Star Moon Kingdom. Although these team dungeons did not drop the best weapons, equipment and materials, they were sources of fire essence stones, ice crystal water and Titan Oregon. These 3 materials were extremely rare and were very difficult to acquire from the market. However, they were also the main materials necessary for the Hell Tank. Currently, due to Zero Wing's promotion to 4-star guild, the guild's fame had skyrocketed, and the guild's growth potential had risen considerably. As a result of this change, however, the guild had also earned the attention of many superpowers. Originally, he had planned on directly taking control of the secret stone fortress. However, if he did so now, the consequences would be extremely severe. The various superpowers coveting the fortress would definitely go crazy over the matter. Hence, what he needed to do right now wasn't to take control of the secret stone fortress but to boost the guild's combat power. Meanwhile, the simplest way to do so was to expand the guild's arsenal of war weapons. Currently, he had 2 new war weapons he could make. One was the Guardian Puppet while the other was the Hell Tank. He had just acquired the Philosopher's Hand, and it would take Melancholic Smile some time to select trustworthy advanced lifestyle players. Nurturing these advanced lifestyle players into masters would also take quite a lot of time. The production of the Guardian Puppet required too many masters. Chapter 1859, Improved Power Source. As the light blue loading bar filled, the analysis began to take more time to complete. Once the analysis reached 90% completion, each subsequent percentage took over a dozen seconds. Don't tell me it's going to fail? Shifeng couldn't help his growing nerves as he watched the loading bar. Blank subclass designs generally had a 100% modification success rate, but as far as he knew, no one had ever tried to modify parts of a design. The subclass design was a one-time use item, vanishing regardless of whether the modification succeeded or not. Nobody would take the risk of losing an opportunity to upgrade their subclass to the next rank. Finally, after more than 10 minutes, the modification finished. And Shifeng heard the sound of a system notification. System, congratulations. You have modified the Hell Tank's power source and acquired the dark gold ranked Hell Tank power source design. System, congratulations. You have created the dark gold ranked Hell Tank power source design. Wonderful. Shifeng was ecstatic as he watched words and diagrams appear on the blank parchment before him. Now that he had created a new dark gold item, he only needed to accumulate 100,000 forging proficiency points to become an intermediate master forger. Following which, Shifeng eagerly clicked to inspect the dark gold power source design. The upgrade would improve the power source's transfer of energy throughout the Hell Tank. Not only would this increase the Hell Tank's movement speed, but it would also increase the power of the tank's cannons. Amazing. It's so much stronger after the modification. Shifeng was astonished as he inspected the upgraded power source. At the fine gold rank, the power source could supply anywhere from 200 to 300 units of energy per second. This energy would power the Hell Tank's movement, defenses, and attacks. After its upgrade to dark gold rank, the power source could generate between 320 and 400 units of energy per second. In terms of performance, the power source had improved by more than 30%. Moreover, the new power source's energy output was far more stable. Now, the Hell Tank's dark gold power source could rival the power source of an advanced tank. Although advanced tanks' power sources were also dark gold rank, they required far more precious materials to construct. The required materials for the Hell Tank's modified power source, on the other hand, hadn't changed. Only the design now required a higher quantity of materials. The fact that it could rival an advanced tank's power source was amazing. The various empires commanded advanced tanks to combat mythic monsters. These war weapons weren't available to players. Guild leader, I've already collected all the materials you've requested in Blackwing City. Abyss and the others have also returned from Ocean Viewing Town. Melancholic Smile reported joyfully as she entered Shifeng's forging room. Should I bring them to you? Send them here, Shifeng said, nodding. Now that he had completed the modifications, he could start the Hell Tank's production. With Titan City and Burning Abyss's tutelage, the Candlelight trading firm had gained 2 more master engineers, bringing the total to 3, the minimum required to craft the Hell Tank. Although Shifeng wasn't an intermediate master forger yet, with the Philosopher's Hand he could perform like one. In addition, he had a much higher success rate when forging the power source than ordinary intermediate master forgers since he had created the upgraded power source. A short moment later, Burning Abyss and the 2 other master engineers stepped into Shifeng's special forging room. Despite these 3 players' status as master engineers, they still looked at Shifeng with nervous and excited energy. Anywhere else, Even a first-rate guild's guild leader would have to treat them with respect due to their identities as master engineers. However, as employees of the candlelight trading firm, they knew their place in the trading firm. Master lifestyle players might be good, but they were not irreplaceable. With the candlelight trading firm's strength, it would have no issues nurturing more masters in the future. They were proof of this. Guild leader, do you need us for something? Burning Abyss asked. I've asked you here today to help me produce an item. However, before we do, you'll need to sign a confidentiality agreement, Shifeng told Burning Abyss's group of 3. If any of you don't wish to do so, I won't force you. I'll just find someone else to replace you later. If there are no problems, the contracts are on the table. Burning Abyss and his companions revealed confused expressions. Before they had become master engineers, they had signed Candlelight's core member contract, which was already quite strict. Logically, there should be no need to sign an additional confidentiality agreement. Although these 3 were curious, they didn't hesitate to sign the new contract Shifeng had presented. Good. Since you've signed the contract, take a look at this, Shifeng said as he revealed the Hell Chariot design to the 3 master engineers. If you don't have any issues with it, you may begin production right away. When the 3 master engineers saw the design, they were dazed. Amazing! This is an intermediate tank. Burning Abyss's eyes glowed with excitement as Head read the Hell tank's introduction. The other 2 master engineers couldn't tear themselves away from the design after seeing it, and they wanted nothing more than to test their skills on the Hell tank's production. Although they had learned a lot while producing speedboats, the knowledge they had gained was a drop in the ocean compared to what they would learn as they crafted this intermediate tank. If they grasped the Hell tank's production method, it could even help promote them to intermediate masters. Guild leader, we don't have any problems with the engineering aspects of this design, but some of its components will require an intermediate master forger, Burning Abyss said awkwardly. Don't worry about that. I'll send the components to you soon, Shifeng said. Shifeng's decisive, confident reply stunned the 3 engineers. Has the guild leader already been promoted to intermediate master forger? This thought popped into the master engineers' minds. They couldn't think of any other explanation for how Shifeng would acquire the required components. An intermediate master. They had only become basic masters after a long struggle, and even now they had no idea how to become intermediate masters. They didn't even know if they could reach the intermediate master rank, yet Shifeng had just hinted that he had already become one. Alright, you guys should get to work on the basic components. I'll have the forging components sent over soon. Naturally, Shifeng knew what these 3 were thinking, but he didn't bother to refute their assumptions. Although he wasn't an official intermediate master, he wasn't far from becoming one. After all, he only lacked sufficient proficiency points. He could easily deal with that by investing time into forging items. Following which, Burning Abyss and the others went to another special workshop and started to craft the necessary basic components. As for Shifeng, he activated the Philosopher's Hand's Philosopher's Soul. He then began to refine the Titan ore and the various other materials Melancholic Smile had delivered. After 8 straight hours of work, Shifeng had finally crafted all of the Hell tank's forged components. Although he had failed multiple times and wasted a lot of materials, the losses were within his expectations. Burning Abyss and his engineers had long since completed their part, and once they received the forged components, the trio carefully began to piece it all together. As Shifeng watched the 3 master engineers combine the individual components and transform them into a full-fledged tank, he could not help his growing excitement. The Hell tank was crimson and 4 times the size of a tank in the real world. The Hell tank took up nearly half of the special forming room like some gigantic slumbering beast. Guild leader. It's a success. We combined all of the components successfully. Burning Abyss shouted in elation as he inserted the final piece and received a notification from the system. Chapter I-860 New Hell Tank. Burning Abyss's joyful voice echoed inside the spacious and messy special workshop. When the other 2 master engineers saw the cold, pitch-black Hell tank before them, they too could not help but become excited. As the makers of the Hell tank, they knew very clearly just how amazing it was. The Hell tank's armor was made from Titan ore, an incomparably tough material that was basically indestructible to current players. If players couldn't damage the Hell tank's armor, then they wouldn't be able to reduce its durability either. With the frightening mana output of the Hell Tank's power source, the tank would be capable of rolling over any Tier 3 monsters in its path. As for Tier 2 players, they were no different from powerless children before the Hell Tank. The destructive power of the Hell Tank's body itself was already plenty troublesome to players. What more the firepower the Hell Tank possessed. When they thought about fielding the Hell Tank in combat in the future, they could easily imagine the Hell Tank's destructive power instilling fear into their enemies. They really wished they could put the Hell Tank to use right away. Excellent. Shifeng also could not help a little excitement as he looked at the completed Hell Tank. Burning Abyss and the other two only understood that the Hell Tank was a very powerful weapon. However, they failed to appreciate what an intermediate tank represented, never having witnessed how frightening an existence an intermediate tank was when used against players out in the fields. Even a 100-man Tier 2 expert team would be helpless against a fully armed intermediate tank. There would only be one outcome: death. The powerful armor of an intermediate tank was not something that Tier 2 skills and spells could destroy. Only Tier 3 attacks stood a chance of damaging an intermediate tank slightly. Hence, for Tier 2 players, going up against an intermediate tank would be akin to raiding an invincible monster. However, the immunity to Tier 2 attacks and below still wasn't the most amazing aspect of an intermediate tank. The crucial detail about an intermediate tank was its speed and power. If one had an intermediate tank, one could basically move unhindered so long as one did not come across Tier 3 or above players and monsters or players that wielded war weapons. After verifying that the production was a success, Shifeng arrived before the Hell Tank and stored it inside his epic-ranked spatial bag. This scene stupefied Burning Abyss and his fellow master engineers. The Hell Tank wasn't an item that could be stored whole in a player's bag space. If players wished to store it there, they would have to disassemble it first into smaller parts because not only did the Hell Tank occupy too many bag space slots, but its weight was also extraordinary. Normally, several players would be required to lug it around. Currently, even the most expensive 1,000-slot bag sold on the market could hold only 1/10 of the Hell Tank. If one wanted to store the entire Hell Tank in a single bag, said bag would need a capacity of 10,000 slots. However, this was still not the most crucial point. The deciding factor was the weight. Carrying a Hell Tank required at least 5 strength-focused Tier 2 players. Nevertheless, Shifeng had actually stored the entire Hell Tank all by himself. What Burning Abyss and the other two did not know was that epic-ranked spatial bags existed in God's domain. Take Shifeng's spatial bag for example. Not only could it store 12,000 slots worth of items, but it also had a built-in warehouse that allowed the storage of non-bag space items. In addition, items stored inside the spatial bag wouldn't add to the load of players. Hence, Shifeng was able to store the Hell Tank without problems. After collecting the Hell Tank, Shifeng had to inspect its attributes. As the Hell Tank was a war weapon, its attribute panel could not be inspected while it was present in the outside world. At most, one would see only its name when inspecting it. Only after storing it in a bag space could one inspect it. Hell Tank. Intermediate tank equipped with a dark gold rank power source. Maximum capacity. 20 people increases movement speed by 210%. Possesses upper rank Tier 2 defensive capabilities. Durability 400 additional skill 1 dash. Magic Shield. Constructs a Tier 3 magic barrier that can absorb up to a maximum of 3 million damage for 24 minutes. Each use costs 80 magic crystals. Cooldown 10 minutes. Additional skill 2 dash. Hell Cannon. 1,700 yard range. Deals a devastating blow at the Tier 3 standard to a 35-yard radius. Each use costs 90 magic crystals. Cooldown 14 seconds. Additional skill 3 dash. Flame Spears. Creates 14 flame spears. Each flame spear carries power at the peak of Tier 2 and has a 150-yard attack range. Cooldown 7 seconds. It's improved by so much? Shifeng hid his astonishment as he looked at the attributes of the Hell Tank. The original Hell Tank was already top tier among intermediate tanks. However, upgrading its power source to dark gold rank had improved it significantly in every aspect. Not only did the higher mana output bring a 30% increase to its movement speed, but it also amplified the magic runes carved on the Hell Tank's armor, boosting the Hell tank's defensive capabilities from Tier 2 to upper rank Tier 2. With this, even Tier 3 attacks would barely damage the Hell tank. Aside from that, the upgraded power source had also strengthened the Hell tank's firepower slightly and reduced its energy consumption somewhat. Overall, the Hell tank's combat power had improved by at least 40%. Although it still wasn't comparable to an advanced tank, it also far superior to an ordinary intermediate tank. Guild leader, now that we've completed the first Hell tank, may we start production on the second one? Burning Abyss asked carefully as he looked at the silent Shifeng. He was already captivated with the Hell tank at this point. The engineering techniques involved in the Hell tank's production were superior to the production techniques for the ships he had made thus far. One could say that tanks were his current romance. Right now, all he wanted to do was mass-produce the Hell tank and research the theories behind its production so that he could create his own tank in the future. However, the materials required to produce the Hell tank were simply too staggering. Just the engineering materials needed were already extremely difficult to acquire, not to mention the forging materials. Without permission from the guild, the Hell tank was not something he could produce as he wished. Of course, currently what you all need to do is produce the Hell tank's engineering components from the materials on hand. If you run out, you can ask Melancholic for some more. I'll also try to have the forging components delivered to you as soon as possible, Shifeng replied, nodding. After seeing the Hell tank's strength, he was even more certain of its necessity. Although Melancholic Smile had collected barely enough materials for 3 or 4 Hell tanks, which would be hardly sufficient to accomplish anything major, he had already mobilized the entire guild's power to collect the necessary main materials. It wouldn't be long before they acquired more Titan Oregon. Upon hearing Shifeng's command, the 3 master engineers grew even more excited. Without hesitation, they rushed back to their respective workstations and resumed producing the engineering components. As for Shifeng, he returned to his special forging room and crafted the forging components. He wanted to fabricate as many Hell tanks as possible before the airport's completion. Like so, 2 days passed by in the blink of an eye. During this time, Zero Wings members were continuously raiding the dungeons Shifeng specified and collected a large amount of Titan Oregon, including the other rare materials Melancholic Smile sourced from other kingdoms and empires, which were integral to the Hell tank's production. Shifeng and the others had managed to build 5 more Hell tanks. Now, a total of 6 Hell tanks were sitting inside the Candlelight Trading Firm's underground warehouse. Looking at the 6 Hell tanks, Shifeng found them to be a spectacle to behold. Shifeng's forging proficiency had also increased rapidly during this period. Including the proficiency points the system awarded him before, he had over 70,000 forging proficiency points accumulated. He now needed just a little over 20,000 points to officially reach the intermediate master rank. As Shifeng was considering producing the components for the 7th Hell tank, he suddenly received a system notification. System: the construction of Silverwing Town's airport is completed. Chapter 1861, Airport opening time's up already. After reading the system notification, Shifeng promptly stopped his work, contacted Cream Cocoa, and instructed her to take his place. He had worked constantly over the past 2 days to produce the Hell tank. He had also used the Philosopher's Hand to help Cream Cocoa and Melancholic Smile forge the Hell tank's components. After all, he was Zero Wings guild leader. He didn't have a lot of spare time to commit to the Hell tank. Now that the 2 women had become basic master forgers, the Philosopher's Hand could help them perform as intermediate master forgers as well. As the 2 women forged more components, their forging standards improved. Likewise, their production success rate increased. Although they weren't nearly as skilled as Shifeng when crafting the Hell tank's upgraded power source, their success range was tolerable. With this, Melancholic Smile and Cream Cocoa could work on the Hell tank's forged components as long as they had materials, even if he wasn't around. When Hell tanks were used on a battlefield, they weren't very effective unless an army had a certain number of them. However, once they had a sufficient force, players wouldn't be able to compare to their destructive power. Hence, production of the Hell tanks must continue without pause. Moreover, once she used and familiarized herself with the Philosopher's Hand, Melancholic Smile could use the alchemy treasure effectively to nurture Candlelight's advanced lifestyle players. With it, she could gauge which players would quickly reach master rank. This, in turn, would increase Candlelight's strength far more quickly. After passing his work off to Cream Cocoa, Shifeng used a guild transfer scroll to teleport to Silverwing Town. Or Empire, Silverwing Town. As Shifeng walked through the streets, he could see that the town's player population had significantly decreased. The previously crowded main street alone had lost over half of its players. A strange depression had descended on the town. It was nowhere near as lively as it had been. Sure enough, the Crimson Flame Fortress's allure to elite and expert players is quite strong. With a glance at the streets, Shifeng noticed that the majority of these players were ordinary players. Very few were elites or experts. The Crimson Flame Fortress definitely couldn't compete with Silverwing Town in terms of facilities, but it could teleport players to various locations near the Ore capital city while evading the Ore army's strict patrol. It was a fatal attraction for elite and expert players since this allowed them to reach the Azura Mode regional dungeon with far more ease. In contrast, although Silverwing Town was very close to the primordial divine ruin, a limited number of players were allowed to enter the ruin at any one time. Meanwhile, the various large guilds and superpowers monopolized the entry slots. Independent players had no chance of entering the ruin. It was natural that these players wanted to head towards the Ore capital city in search of treasure and EXP. After all, every player wanted to grow stronger and get rich overnight. The Ore capital city provided a golden opportunity. Even if players failed to find amazing treasure, they could acquire enough magic crystals in the regional dungeon to earn a small fortune, selling them to the various large guilds in bulk. Although the various team dungeons had a chance of dropping magic crystals, they didn't drop many and the drop rate was painfully low. In contrast, even the Ore capital city's level 50+ Lord-ranked monsters had a considerably high drop rate. And these Lord-ranked monsters were common in the regional dungeon. Damn the Blackwater Guild. They've gone too far. We're not even Zero Wing members. We are just here for a few Silverwing Town transportation quests, yet they treat us like Zero Wing members, annihilating our team without a second thought. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Blackwater's members and the Dark players have stated that from tomorrow on, any player that wants to complete a transportation quest in Silverwing Town will have to pay a protection fee. Otherwise, they won't guarantee our safety during our quest. Surviving in Silverwing Town had become too difficult. I'm thinking of heading to the Ore capital city and be done with it. This is Zero Wing's territory. Isn't the guild going to do anything about this? Does Zero Wing even have the leeway to? Right now, Zero Wing's teams are constantly fighting Blackwater's members and the Dark players. There have already been several hundred skirmishes within Silverwing Town's vicinity. However, Blackwater is simply too ruthless. It used its point system to attract large numbers of elite and expert players to fight for it. Now, Blackwater's forces outnumber Zero Wing by many times. Zero Wing just doesn't have enough manpower to protect every corner of its territory. I've heard that Zero Wing has suffered more than 20,000 casualties already. Where would Zero Wing find the time and manpower to deal with the highway robberies? I've also heard that Aqua Rose personally led an expert legion to stop Blackwater's members in order to protect its territory. In the end, nearly half of Zero Wing's main force members and more than 2,000 Zero Wing experts died in that battle. Meanwhile, Blackwater lost a little over 2,000 experts and 3,000 elites. In the end, as Blackwater had too many people, and since bounty hunters had begun to join the fight, Aqua Rose's legion was forced to retreat. Now, Zero Wing has limited its movement around the town. It seems Silverwing Town isn't hospitable anymore. Let's just try our luck in the Ore capital city. Hearing the players leisurely chat on the street, some of the nearby independent players couldn't help their deep sigh. Silverwing Town wasn't declining because its facilities had fallen behind the times, but because of Blackwater's ruthlessness. The guild gave independent players no hope of making a living in Silverwing Town. They're targeting the town's independent players now? Shifeng was surprised as he overheard the conversations. Has Blackwater's leader in the Ore Empire been replaced? Guilds rarely involved independent players when they fought each other in God's domain. Not only was the act morally bankrupt, but it would also leave a bad impression of the guild. Most importantly, it would turn independent players against the guild. Yet, Blackwater ignored these consequences and attacked independent players. It had even gone as far as to charge protection fees. The vicious methods the guild employed wasn't typical of Blackwater's previous pattern. Previously, Blackwater had operated arrogantly. Although it had tried to use overwhelming power to force its opponents to submit, the guild had only pointed its blade at its enemies. The guild hadn't involved bystanders. However, Shifeng didn't give the matter much thought as he made his way towards the new airport. Regardless of what Blackwater actions, there was one thing he could be sure of: the guild was his enemy. Although Blackwater's new tactics were unexpected, now that the airport was complete he could begin to take action. Very quickly Shifeng arrived in the town's eastern outer area. Since this area didn't have any particularly important buildings, very few players normally visited this side of town. Since Silverwing Town had deteriorated, even fewer people wandered this way. However, the gigantic magic barrier that enveloped the airport was extremely eye-catching, so a few passing players had stopped to examine the massive barrier. Recently, over a dozen level 100 NPC guards had gathered at the mountain-like barrier's entrance, attracting even more attention. Lord Protector, I am the guard team's Knight Captain Fleisch. I will be responsible for guiding you once we're inside. Fleisch, a Tier 3 Knight Captain, respectfully introduced himself as Shifeng arrived. I'll have to trouble you then, Shifeng said, nodding as he followed Fleisch into the magic barrier. The moment he entered the magic barrier, a luxurious, spacious airport appeared before his eyes. Icy cold, metallic airships, radiating a manufactured aura, filled the airport, which could practically rival the medium airports he remembered from his previous life. The only difference was the airport size. It was just a little smaller. Lord Protector, this is a special model small airport. It has a total of 5 small docks and 1 medium dock. Each dock comes with its own airship. The airport's operation will require 150 people and 50 people to guard it. The 5 small airships will require 25 intermediate machinists to fly, and the medium airship will require 8 advanced machinists. Once the personnel has been assigned, the airport can open to the public, Fleisch explained as he guided Shifeng through the airport. As you are a city protector, we can help recruit these people for you. However, you will have to pay a monthly employment fee of 4,000 gold. Alright. Let's go with that. Shifeng had more or less learned about airport's personnel requirements during his previous life. Finding the required staff to operate the airport was relatively easy, but finding the appropriate machinists wasn't. The machinist subclass was quite special and rare. It required one to have the engineer, forger, and magician subclasses. Ordinary players already had plenty of trouble developing one subclass, let alone 3. Moreover, one needed to know how to merge the 3 subclasses' techniques. It would take far more time to nurture a machinist than other subclasses as well. With how suddenly he had acquired the airport, he hadn't prepared for this aspect. Naturally, the fact that the system was willing to handle this issue was a welcome reprieve. Following which, Shifeng paid the 4,000 gold monthly employment fee. I have received the 4,000 gold. All staff members will arrive in 10 minutes. Once they do, we can open the airport to the public when you're ready. If there are no issues, I will take my leave, Fleisch said before turning to exit the airport. Following which, Shifeng toured the airport to pass the time. 10 minutes flew by in the blink of an eye. System. Do you wish to open the airport to the public? Chapter 1862, Situation Changes. When the system alerted him of the notification, Shifeng, who stood on one of the flight platforms, noticed that NPCs had already begun their work in the airport. He then called up the airport system interface and chose to open the airport to the public. Immediately, the pitch-black barrier that enveloped the airport began to disintegrate. As it did, it revealed a colossal building which was over 100 meters tall and as large as a stadium that could accommodate 50,000 people. 6 airships were suspended on their flight platforms, which were located on the airport's top floor. In the blink of an eye, the airport had become the most iconic building throughout Silverwing Town. Crap. Is that an airship? How is this possible? How does Silverwing Town have airships? I thought only NPCs could have them. What's going on? Zero Wing has constructed an airport in Silverwing Town? The airport's revelation shocked every player in Silverwing Town. It was difficult to ignore since the 6 airships were so eye-catching. The town's players would see these massive vessels by simply lifting their heads, especially the medium airship. It was nearly the same size as a large passenger plane in the real world. It looked like a flying battleship. As everyone discussed the airport, the sound of a system notification reached their ears. Or Empire Region System announcement. Congratulations to Silverwing Town for being the first to construct an airport in the Or Empire. Rewarding Silverwing Town 30,000 popularity and 1 city passage order. The system announcement repeated 3 times, confirming players' suspicions. Are you kidding me? That's really an airport. Zero Wing actually built one. Now that Silverwing Town has an airport, doesn't that mean we won't have to run all the way to visit the town anymore? We just board an airship. That's exactly what it means. What other use would an airport have? I wonder which NPC city this airport is connected to? Silverwing Town's independent players couldn't help but cheer with joy. They might not know an airport's exact purpose, but they knew that it would make travel to Silverwing Town far easier and more convenient. Instead of running from their home countries to the Or Empire, they could simply board an airship to Silverwing Town. They were incredibly excited just thinking about it. Meanwhile, when they heard the system announcement, the players grinding in the Or Empire read it with glowing, excited expressions. They had long since learned to loathe running from place to place, especially when venturing into a dangerous, neutral map like the Or Empire. Now, however, they could just hitch a ride on an airship. This new convenience would allow them to travel between the Or Empire and their home countries frequently, saving on repair fees, particularly because the repair fees in the Or Empire were unusually high. Meanwhile, a large number of Dark players fought Zero Wings members on a gravel hill not far from Silverwing Town. However, due to the unexpected system announcement, the battling Dark players froze in shock. Big Sis Aqua, our guild leader, is simply too awesome. He actually got his hands on an airport as well. Operating in the Or Empire will be much easier now. With the airport, players that had avoided the Or Empire due to the troublesome travel can take an airship straight to Silverwing Town. As more players visit, these Dark players will have a harder time near Silverwing Town. Moreover, with so many independent players, it'll be impossible for Blackwater to continue suppressing Silverwing Town, Turtledove exclaimed as she watched the Dark players slide to a halt. Since so many Dark players had gone overboard, even Zero Wing's main force members such as herself had been forced to take action. Not only were there so many of these Dark players, but there were also a few extremely powerful experts among them. They moved stealthily as well, making them incredibly challenging to defeat. This had given their team a huge headache. However, with Silverwing Town's new airport, their problems could be easily solved. It wouldn't be long before the news of the airport reached the neighboring countries. The Dark players' momentum continued to increase because normal players had such difficulty visiting the Or Empire. In contrast, since the Or Empire was allied with the Dark forces, Dark players could teleport to the Or capital city directly. However, now that Silverwing Town had an airport, normal players could travel into the Or Empire with relative ease. To Dark players, this was definitely not good news. This would turn the tables on them in the Or Empire. Not only would this allow normal players to earn glory points by killing Dark players in the Or Empire, but they could also acquire the Dark players' weapons and equipment, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Once the airport gained popularity and independent players flooded into the Empire, Dark players would have an even worse time in the Or Empire than they did in human kingdoms and empires. Indeed. But we can't let down our guard. Blackwater and Beast Emperor are our main enemies. Based on the latest reports, Blackwater has dispatched its capable vice guild leader Xuanwu Qisha to lead the fight in the Empire. Xuanwu Qisha's actions thus far have been minor tricks to wear us down. If Xuanwu Qisha takes this seriously, we'll definitely be in trouble. Aqua Rose nodded in agreement with Turtledove's estimation when she saw the Dark players' panicked expressions, but she also offered her teammates a warning. Neither Blackwater nor Beast Emperor had taken any direct action yet. The 2 forces had been relying on others to do their dirty work, yet they'd forced Zero Wing into such a precarious position. Big Sis Aqua, the guild leader, has asked us to return. He says that he has something he wants to discuss with us, Flying Shadow said. I understand. Let's retreat then, Aqua Rose said. With a last glance at the scattering dark players, she gave up the idea of chasing them down and led her team back to Silverwing Town. Now that the airport had been constructed, the dark players' days were numbered. Even if Zero Wing didn't try to exterminate these pests, these dark players wouldn't dare linger near Silverwing Town. Silverwing Town, Zero Wing's residence. Zero Wing's upper echelons who had been grinding or fighting dark players near Silverwing Town promptly gathered in the residence upon receiving Shifeng's call for a meeting. The spacious meeting room practically vibrated with activity as its occupants chatted about Silverwing Town's new airport. The more they talked about it, the more energetic they became. Their exhaustion after ceaselessly fighting had vanished. Guild leader, aside from Cola and the others that are leveling up on your orders, everyone has arrived, Aqua Rose reported to Shifeng, who remained silent in his seat. Good. Let's begin the meeting then. Shifeng nodded. Following which, Aqua Rose stood from her seat with a light cough. Immediately, the meeting room fell silent as everyone turned toward the guild leader's throne, wondering about the purpose of today's meeting. I'm sure you all know about Silverwing Town's recent development. I believe that all of you have had your hands full with the fight against the Dark players and Blackwater's members. You should have also noticed that we have been forced to shrink our territory around Silverwing Town, Shifeng said and gestured, calling up the Or Empire's regional map in the center of the meeting table. However, now that the airport is complete, I've decided to expand Zero Wing's activity in the Or Empire to increase our members' leveling speed and obtain more resources to strengthen the guild. When they heard Shifeng's intentions, everyone in the meeting room grew excited. They had waited a long time for this moment. Because of the Dark players and Beast Emperor's evil beasts, they had been forced to reduce their territory and activity. But now that they had solved the problem of the Dark players, this was a good opportunity to expand. Guild leader, how far are we planning on expanding our territory? Aqua Rose asked. We're going to take the Or Empire's entire southeastern region, Shifeng announced, gesturing at the southeast section of the map before him. Chapter 1863, Expansion Plan. After Shifeng was done speaking, the originally lively meeting room promptly fell silent. Everyone inside gaped in shock as they took in Shifeng's calm expression. It was as if he considered what he had just mentioned something trifling, something that could be accomplished easily. The Orc Empire was an extremely large map. Although it might not be comparable to an actual empire, it was at least 10 times larger than an ordinary neutral map. Even now, the territory they occupied in the Orc Empire covered only the vicinity of the primordial divine ruin in the outer area of the Orc Empire's eastern region. On the other hand, the Empire's entire southeastern region was more than 10 times larger than their current territory. Executing such a large-scale territorial expansion might be possible if their guild did not have any enemies in the Orc Empire, but they were currently at war with Blackwater. This meant that there would be territorial disputes over the scarce high-resource areas. In order to ensure that guild members would be able to develop themselves normally in these areas, they would have to increase the manpower allocation to these areas in order to ensure their advantage. However, their forces were already stretched thin just defending their current territory. Spreading their forces further would allow Blackwater and Beast Emperor to deal them a severe blow. Nowadays, not only did Blackwater's members in the Orc Empire greatly outnumbered Zero Wings, but due to Blackwater's bounty system, there were also a large number of experts hunting Zero Wings members. Now, the only reason why they could afford an expansion was the solution of the Dark player problem. Doing so guaranteed that guild members could grind efficiently and acquire all sorts of resources. However, attempting to expand their territory in the Orc Empire to more than 10 times its current size would simply be counterproductive. After all, Zero Wing did not have the strength or manpower to defend such a large area. Without sufficient manpower for surveillance and patrol squads, the guild's teams would very easily be surrounded and annihilated by Blackwater's and Beast Emperor's armies. In God's domain, guild teams caused quite a commotion when grinding or conducting large-scale quests, especially when operating in high-resource areas. Their movements were easily detectable. Hence, whenever guild teams were conducting an operation, they needed people constantly patrolling and monitoring the surroundings to prevent getting ambushed and surrounded by enemies. Moreover, even if they dealt with the manpower problem by moving more members from Starmoon Kingdom to the Orc Empire, the players tasked with surveillance and patrols needed to have sufficient strength. Otherwise, they would end up getting killed by some random party from the enemy. It might be fine if these players were killed once or twice, but if the frequency grew too high, these players would end up crippled. Not to mention, the players tasked with surveillance and patrol had to be capable of executing proper defenses and buying time. After all, compared to a large team of players, a small group of players would have an easier time escaping. Hence, players tasked with surveillance and patrol needed to be able to buy time for the larger team to retreat. Without sufficient strength, players simply wouldn't be up to such a task. Guild leader. Although we can acquire more high-resource areas by expanding our territory and increase the guild's development speed, with our current strength, we simply can't afford to defend such a large area. This expansion will just end up backfiring on us and give Blackwater the opportunity to weaken our expert and elite players. Aqua Rose then added, "My suggestion is to occupy 2 or 3 high-resource areas first. If it's just that much, we'll have enough manpower and strength to defend these areas. Once we stabilize our strength, we can then proceed with occupying more high-resource areas." The crowd inside the room expressed their agreement after hearing Aqua Rose's suggestion. While expanding Zero Wings territory by more than 10 times would indeed increase the guild members' leveling speed significantly and rake in a lot of wealth, that was dependent on them being able to defend their territory. They are thinking of ways to raise their status in the fortress so that they can garrison it and use it as a foundation to capture the Copper Mountain Fortress. After hearing Shifeng's sudden non sequitur, Aqua Rose gave a detailed introduction of the Secret Stone Fortress. At this point in time, the Secret Stone Fortress was already a competition ground for the various large guilds. Particularly after witnessing the Crimson Flame Fortress's daily income, the various superpowers were extremely eager to control a fortress of their own. That's right. Originally, I wanted to keep this matter a secret. However, there is no longer a need to do so, Shifeng said, nodding. He then swept a glance at everyone present and added, "Through completing a quest, I have already acquired the rights to garrison the Secret Stone Fortress. I believe you all should understand what this entails." Chapter 1864, Crazy Operation. The garrison rights to the Secret Stone Fortress. What? With the rights to garrison the Secret Stone Fortress, doesn't that mean our guild is now the fortress's manager? Upon hearing Shifeng's words, everyone immediately revealed surprised and excited expressions. The various large guilds were currently contesting crazily over the Secret Stone Fortress. They were all looking for ways to become the fortress's manager, so that they could use it as a springboard to acquire the nearby resources, particularly those around the Copper Mountain Fortress. A fortress allowed players to gain control of an area much more easily than a town. This was because the fortresses in the Or Empire allowed players to teleport to anywhere within their vicinity. In other words, a fortress's entire teleportation range was its defended territory, and guilds could send large numbers of reinforcements at any time. With this, enemy players would have difficulty mounting ambushes or encirclements. In addition, the Secret Stone Fortress was partly managed by human NPCs, which made it the safest location in the entire Or Empire. It was not a fortress that current players could threaten. Hence, becoming the manager of the Secret Stone Fortress was equivalent to taking control of an impregnable fortress. Due to this reason, the various large guilds were doing everything they could to become the fortress's manager. Yet now Shifeng suddenly informed them that he had already acquired the garrison rights to the Secret Stone Fortress. How could this revelation not surprise them? I understand. I'll head back to White River City immediately and start gathering the required manpower. Aqua Rose's eyes glowed brightly when she heard Shifeng's words. At this moment she finally understood why Shifeng wanted to transfer an additional 150,000 guild members over to the Or Empire. The acquisition of the Secret Stone Fortress meant that Zero Wings territory had grown to include all areas within the Secret Stone Fortress's teleportation range. The current number of guild members they had in the Or Empire was naturally insufficient to fully take advantage of all that territory. Moreover, with the increase of so many guild members in the Or Empire, Zero Wings' strength in the Empire would also skyrocket. Hold on for a second. Wait till you're done listening to my plan, Shifeng said. He could not help but shake his head and laugh when he saw Aqua Rose's eagerness to occupy the Secret Stone Fortress now. Having a large number of guild members garrison the secret stone fortress is only the first step. Our true goal is the Dark Witch's Tower in the southeastern region of the Or Empire. The Dark Witch's Tower was originally an abandoned tower. However, after the Dark Forces and the Or Empire became allies, it became a temporary teleportation point for the Dark Forces. Due to the existence of this tower, Dark players have easy access to the Empire's southeastern region from the Or capital city. Destroying this temporary teleportation point would not only hinder Dark players' operations in the Empire's southeastern region but also prevent them from cooperating with the Blackwater Guild in targeting us. Although everyone in the room agreed with Shifeng's sentiments, they still had to shake their heads in disapproval after giving the matter some thought. Guild leader, although the Dark Witch's Tower's defenses aren't comparable to a fortress's, it is still guarded by Dark NPCs. A large number of Dark players normally gather there as well. The various superpowers have also thought about destroying this gathering point before, but Beast Emperor simply isn't giving them any chances. He has dispatched a large number of evil beasts and evil demons to guard the place long-term. Even if we double the forces we currently have in the Or Empire, the likelihood of us succeeding in destroying that gathering point is very low. That's right. Moreover, if we execute such a large-scale operation, there's no way that Blackwater won't find out about it. At that time, Blackwater will no doubt dispatch its own army to launch a pincer attack on us. At this point in time, the Dark Witch's Tower had become a target of hatred of normal players operating in the Or Empire's southeastern region. Many wished they could burn it to the ground. After getting a thorough understanding of the situation, they all involuntarily fell into a daze. What's going on? Zero Wing is actually planning on making a last stand against Beast Emperor and attack Ancient Rock City? Is Zero Wing insane? It has just obtained an airport, and it is already trying to pick a fight with Beast Emperor? News of this situation quickly spread into the ears of the various major powers of Star Moon Kingdom and sent the kingdom's players into an uproar. As for Shifeng, he had arrived at the Secret Stone Fortress by himself. Currently, although the Secret Stone Fortress had yet to be fully opened to the public, players belonging to the various major powers had already gathered here. These players easily numbered more than 100,000. Including the independent players that had come here to rest, the fortress's total player population already exceeded 500,000. After taking a look at the general situation inside the fortress, Shifeng made his way to the fortress's administration building. Lord Claude, I have already collected the 60,000 gold according to our agreement. Once Shifeng met up with Claude, he handed over 60,000 gold to the NPC. Excellent. This is indeed 60,000 gold. With this we'll finally have enough funds to reconstruct the Secret Stone Fortress, Claude said, smiling as he looked at the bag of coins in his hand. He then took out a golden token and said, "Here is the Secret Stone Fortress's token. From now onward, you are the Secret Stone Fortress's advanced manager. I hope you can contribute more towards the fortress's development in the future." Here is 500 gold, Shifeng said, handing over the money before he started filling up the form before him. Meanwhile, the NPC beauty's actions immediately had the guild players inside the hall gaping in shock. Who is he? Why is the NPC being so respectful toward him? That guy is carrying out the guild garrisoning procedures. How is that possible? Didn't they say that the exchange function is only available after an individual has accumulated 200 CPs? How can he complete the guild garrisoning procedures already? For a time, the members of the various large guilds failed to react to what was going on. When Shifeng was done filling up the form and the NPC beauty confirmed that Zero Wing had become a guild recognized by the Secret Stone Fortress, the sound of a system announcement suddenly entered everyone's ears. Orc Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild to garrison the Secret Stone Fortress. Rewarding 500 Secret Stone Fortress Guild contribution points and the rights to rent a large residence in the Secret Stone Fortress. The system announcement repeated 3 times. Only after the system's voice faded away did the various guild players inside the office hall snap out of their daze. Zero Wing. Damn it. How did Zero Wing acquire the garrison rights so quickly? There must be a secret to this. We need to report to our superiors immediately. At this moment, the eyes of the various guild players present had already turned bloodshot. The large guilds had long since made the secret stone fortress a priority. In order to secure the garrison rights to the fortress, their guilds had invested a ridiculous amount of manpower. However, even now their guilds still had little to show for their efforts. Nevertheless, Zero Wing acquired not only the garrison rights but even a large residence. This benefit would provide significant help to a guild in competing for the Orc Empire's resources. Very quickly, news of this matter entered the ears of the various superpowers' upper echelons. Isn't Zero Wing just an up-and-coming guild? Now it has not only an airport but also the garrison rights to the secret stone fortress. Not bad. If our guild can obtain these things, we'll be able to monopolize at least half of the Orc Empire's bountiful resources. Have someone contact Zero Wing and tell them that King's Return is willing to invest in Zero Wing and let it become a subordinate guild of King's Return. Good. Very good. Zero Wing's development speed is truly surprising. It's no wonder Blackwater is constantly trying to devour it and has gone as far as to send that woman over. Immediately have someone contact Zero Wing and tell it that the Crimson Emperor is willing to deal with Blackwater together with it and help it protect the resources it has. In return, however, Zero Wing has to become Crimson Emperor's subordinate guild. Upon receiving this piece of news, the various superpowers all started taking action. Previously, they could ignore the existence of Zero Wing, as the guild still couldn't threaten their interests. However, the secret stone fortress was a strategic location that involved a significant portion of the resources available in the entire Orc Empire. This was not a realm that Zero Wing should be allowed to touch. Shortly after the system announcement, Aqua Rose, who was currently in Starmoon Kingdom arranging for the transfer of members to the Orc Empire, received invitations for a meeting from various superpowers, as many as 7 at this point, which made her scalp tingle. Just dealing with Blackwater, a large guild with a powerful background, was already enough to put Zero Wing in a precarious situation. If Zero Wing were to provoke all these superpowers now, the consequences would be unimaginable. Finding herself at a loss as to what to do, Aqua Rose immediately contacted Shifeng and asked, "Guild leader, more and more superpowers have sent representatives to meet with me. Do I accept their invitations?" Even if the representatives of the various superpowers did not state their intentions, she could already guess the purpose of these meetings. Back when Zero Wing was still operating solely in Starmoon Kingdom, it could afford to provoke these superpowers as it had the home ground advantage. At worst, the superpowers would only feel slighted by Zero Wing's rejection. They wouldn't take any real action against Zero Wing. After all, they had more important matters to deal with. They simply didn't have enough time and manpower to do something unprofitable. However, the situation was different now. The Orc Empire was the competition ground for the various superpowers. Meanwhile, the matter regarding the secret stone fortress involved the future of the entire Orc Empire. Hence, these superpowers would not take Zero Wing's refusal lightly. If the various superpowers got serious, they were very likely to destroy Zero Wing. After all, if they could not acquire the secret stone fortress, then they wouldn't allow others to acquire it either, much less leave Zero Wing to monopolize it. Chapter 1866, Stepping Stone. They sure moved fast, Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw the anguished expression on Aqua Rose's face. He had long since anticipated that the various superpowers would make such a move. Previously, Zero Wing had already incurred the envy of the various superpowers over Silverwing Town. However, as Silverwing Town couldn't affect the overall situation at the Orc Empire and Zero Wing's territory there was still relatively small, the various superpowers weren't that concerned about Zero Wing. The secret stone fortress, though, was different. Every location within the teleportation range of the secret stone fortress could be considered the fortress's territory. Not to mention, the secret stone fortress was the safest fortress for human players in the entire Orc Empire. The fortress was also relatively close to the Copper Mountain Fortress, presenting a stepping stone for the capture of the Copper Mountain Fortress. One fortress already provided an extensive territory. One could easily imagine what kind of temptations 2 fortresses held. In particular, seeing Blackwater occupy the Crimson Flame Fortress made the various superpowers even more anxious to obtain a fortress of their own. Now that Zero Wing had acquired the garrison rights to the secret stone fortress, it would be strange for the various superpowers not to take action. Guild leader, you still have the leisure to laugh? Aqua Rose exclaimed, thunderstruck. If we meet them now and refuse to cooperate with them, it would be tantamount to declaring ourselves their enemy. So it's best not to meet them for now, Shifeng said. But if we don't meet with them, I'm afraid the end result would still be the same. Aqua Rose felt that Shifeng's proposal wasn't a good idea either. In fact, maintaining their silence would most likely annoy the various superpowers even more. That's why I said that we won't be meeting them for now, Shifeng pointed out, chuckling. How are things coming along on your side? I'm almost ready. I'll be able to have our members transfer over in half an hour or so, Aqua Rose said. Another half hour? After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng said, that's too long. For now, you should return to Silverwing Town and leave the transfer for Snow to handle. Once you're back, immediately gather an army and head for Ancient Rock City. So soon? Aqua Rose asked in surprise. With the superpowers already getting antsy, we naturally need to hasten our movements, Shifeng explained. Moreover, if we drag things on for too long, Blackwater and Beast Emperor might alter their plans to deal with us. If that happens, our assault might not go so smoothly. I understand. I'll gather the army right away, Aqua Rose said, nodding. She promptly dropped her current task and proceeded according to Shifeng's demands. As for Shifeng himself, he returned to White River City's Candlelight trading firm. The Hell tanks were too large and transporting them would not be an easy task. Moreover, Shifeng didn't want too many people to know what he was up to. Hence he decided to transfer the tanks one by one, all by himself. Fortunately, it would take Aqua Rose quite some time to gather an army of 100,000 players at such short notice. After Aqua Rose returned to Silverwing Town, the first thing she did was release a guild announcement stating that she was seeking to gather 100,000 members over at Silverwing Town to execute a siege against Ancient Rock City. Meanwhile, participating members had to be an elite member or above and at least level 50. Shortly after the announcement went public, it sent a commotion throughout Zero Wing. What's going on? Are we going to make a final stand against Beast Emperor? That's Ancient Rock City we're talking about. I recall there being over 1 million evil beasts inside the city. There are even Tier 4 NPCs and a large number of mythic evil demons and evil beasts. We won't even be enough to serve as appetizers if we try to attack all those monsters. Didn't you read the announcement properly? We won't be just 100,000 players. We're also bringing 200 miniature ballistas. Those are war weapons. Even those evil beasts and evil demons won't survive against them for very long. Moreover, since the guild has decided to attack Ancient Rock City, it definitely has other trump cards in store. Haha. This is wonderful. During the last major war, I was only a normal member of the guild. Now I'm finally qualified to participate in a war. Zero Wing's members had an intense debate over this sudden decision to attack Ancient Rock City. This was especially true for the guild members that frequently operated within the Or Empire. Thus far, they have been constantly suppressed by Beast Emperor's evil beasts and evil demons. Now that a good opportunity to vent their pent-up frustration was before them, they were naturally eager to jump at the chance. Meanwhile, word of Zero Wing's large-scale operation naturally entered the ears of the various major powers almost as soon as it was announced. Interesting. Zero Wing has just acquired the garrison rights to the secret stone fortress, and it is already planning to assault Beast Emperor's Ancient Rock City? How rich. Zero Wing is actually mobilizing 200 miniature ballistas in addition to an army of 100,000 elites. Is Zero Wing trying to use this as an opportunity to demonstrate its strength and solidify its position in the Or Empire? Does Zero Wing want to prove itself to be qualified for the secret stone fortress's garrison rights? The various major powers easily discern Zero Wing's motives for besieging Ancient Rock City this time, especially the superpowers who were trying to recruit Zero Wing. Guild leader, Zero Wing is showing our king's return no respect. Should we take action immediately? Hellfiend asked, a sneer on his face as he looked at the white-clad middle-aged man on the screen before him. He never held any goodwill for Zero Wing. If not for his guild leader ordering him to come to negotiate personally with Zero Wing, he would have liked nothing better than to annihilate the upstart guild. Let's wait for a bit. I'm interested to see just how much strength Zero Wing has to actually think that it can defend the secret stone fortress, the middle-aged man replied, smiling as he took a look at the report he just received. Understood. At his guild leader's words, Hellfiend had no choice but to suppress the rage in his heart and wait quietly in White River City. I'll let you remain arrogant for now, Zero Wing. Once you lose to Beast Emperor Dash. Many superpowers desired the ancient rock city that Beast Emperor occupied. However, even until now, not a single superpower had managed to do anything to the city. Needless to say, the likelihood of Zero Wing successfully capturing ancient rock city was even lower. Like King's return, the other superpowers also chose to wait and see in regard to Zero Wing's sudden movement this time. They intended to look at the outcome of this impending battle before deciding. A defeat in this battle would force Zero Wing to acknowledge its inadequacy. If that happened, negotiations would go much more smoothly afterward. Zero Wing really is overestimating itself. Nine Dragons Emperor, who is currently in the Black Dragon Empire, could not help but laugh when he received news about Zero Wing's intentions. Originally, I was planning on advising the Great Pavilion Master to hinder Phoenix Rain from providing aid to Zero Wing. Now it would seem that I won't need to waste the effort. However, I also have to admit that Black Flame is very smart. Had he asked Phoenix Rain to help him and the Great Pavilion Master actually agreed to it, I would have had an excuse to send people over to manage both the Secret Stone Fortress and Silverwing Town. Pavilion Master, what should we do now? Martial Dragon asked. The struggle for the position of Great Pavilion Master has already entered a crucial period. Absolutely nothing must go wrong. Bring a legion of experts over to Ancient Rock City right away. Once Zero Wing's members start escaping, cooperate with Beast Emperor to slaughter Zero Wing's members. It's fine even if you can't wipe them out completely. Just make sure to deal enough damage so that Zero Wing's development stagnates. To prevent Zero Wing from helping Phoenix Rain, Nine Dragons Emperor said. Once I'm done dealing with Phoenix Rain, it'll be Zero Wing's turn to die. In response, Martial Dragon nodded and took his leave. Meanwhile, inside the Evil God's branch temple in Ancient Rock City. Good. Very good. You want to use me as a stepping stone to raise your position in the Or Empire. Beast Emperor flared up in rage after finding out about Zero Wing's actions. Since you are so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Immediately notify all apostles and have them transfer their evil beasts and evil demons over. If Zero Wing's members dare come to Ancient Rock City, I'll make sure none of them leave this place alive. At this moment, even a fool could tell what Zero Wing's goal was. Just as Beast Emperor and his allies were making their move, Aqua Rose finally finished organizing an army of 100,000 players. Guild leader, just like you guessed, Beast Emperor has already recalled the evil beasts and evil demons to Ancient Rock City. By the looks of it, he plans on smiting us, Aqua Rose said, smiling. Good. Let's begin our operation. Sherfone commanded, nodding. Chapter 1867, Battle at Ancient Rock City. On Sherfeng's command, Aqua Rose gathered the army of 100,000 elite and expert players in Silverwing Town, boldly advancing on Ancient Rock City. A total of 100,000 Zero Wing members atop majestic Thunder Wolves exited Silverwing Town. Some of these Thunder Wolves had even been promoted to bronze rank, and not only were they much larger than their ordinary counterparts, but faint arcs of blue electricity also danced along their bodies. In comparison, ordinary Thunder Wolves only gave off electricity from their paws. There were over 5,000 of these bronze-ranked Thunder Wolves, which were also players' companions in battle, wielding skills that could assist their masters. Seeing these Thunder Wolves greatly shocked the players in Silverwing Town. Amazing! Why do these mounts feel even stronger than ordinary players? Crap. My guild has only just built its stable and is preparing to nurture a guild mount, yet so many of Zero Wing's members have already nurtured their guild mounts to bronze rank? Although I have heard that Zero Wing's members are well equipped, isn't this a little much? Those are 100,000 players we are talking about, Yet every single one is wearing at least 1 or 2 pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment. These players can rank among the top of my guild's elite members. Look at the experts wearing the core member emblem. Their weakest piece of equipment is level 50 secret silver rank. They even have several pieces of level 50 fine gold equipment. Although my guild has a lot of experts, those experts have only managed to collect 4 or 5 pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment so far. Zero Wing is cheating. The players in Silverwing Town in particular knew that Zero Wing could nearly rival first-rate guilds and had a very large number of experts. However, when they saw Zero Wing's organized and powerful army, they re-evaluated their opinions of the guild. No first-rate guild could hope to amass such an army. As they watched Zero Wing's players march by, many of the guild experts in the town even considered leaving their guilds to join Zero Wing. They had worked arduously in their respective guilds, raiding dungeons and questing every day, but they had only gotten their hands on a few pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment. In contrast, even Zero Wing's elite members possessed 1 or 2 pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment, with the more powerful elite members wearing 5 or 6 pieces. However, the most enviable part about Zero Wing's members had to be the Thunder Wolf. Previously, when the various large guilds had yet to acquire a stable of their own, they hadn't understood how valuable the Thunder Wolf was. However, now that some large guilds had their own stable and had begun to nurture their own guild mounts, they finally understood. The majority of the large guilds that acquired a stable were fortunate if they acquired a 3-star mount. However, a 3-star mount had less than a 30% chance of becoming. As for a 4-star mount, encountering one was simply too difficult. Moreover, even if they managed to find one, they wouldn't be able to capture it. Meanwhile, as the Thunder Wolf was a 5-star mount, it had the potential of becoming a mysterious iron mount in the future. There was even a small chance that it could grow into a secret silver mount if nurtured properly. As Zero Wing's army depart for ancient Rock City, many players curiously followed. Not many players had witnessed a battle of tens of thousands of players, let alone a siege war of this scale. They would definitely regret missing out on this rare opportunity. Because of this, many players from neighboring kingdoms, who had learned about the upcoming battle and were confident of their strength, decided to trail after Zero Wing's army. In the face of Zero Wing's army, the various ores and monsters on the path to ancient Rock City were little more than momentary distractions. Even when level 65 Grand Lords appeared, the fierce attacks of several dozen miniature ballistas easily shot them down. When the dark players who had intended to take advantage of the situation and assault Zero Wing's members saw this, their mouths twitched. They then abandoned any thought of ambushing Zero Wing's army. Such power could easily annihilate an army of 10,000 players. Not even expert players would escape 200 miniature ballistas. After all, while a Tier 2 expert might be able to dodge one miniature ballista's attack, dodging 200 simultaneous AoEs would be utterly impossible. Even a Tier 3 expert would most likely fall in the face of such a large-scale attack. As Zero Wing's army arrived at the foot of ancient Rock City, the tension among the spectating players reached its peak. Some spectating players had even started to tremble. The scene before them was simply too spectacular. Zero Wing's 100,000 mounted players had stopped a short distance away from ancient Rock City, and the 200 miniature ballistas the army had brought were sparsely lined up in 2 neat rows, surrounding ancient Rock City's small hill. However, ancient Rock City wouldn't just lie down before this force, with its troops' disposition even stronger than Zero Wing's. At a glance, one could easily spot over 300,000 evil beasts and evil demons waiting outside the city walls, ready for battle. Even the weakest among these monsters was a level 60 special elite, and 5 50-meter-tall level 80 mythic evil beasts stood at the forefront to current players. This army was invincible. Upon seeing this army of monsters, the players observing the battlefield from several thousand yards away with magic mirrors could not help but shudder. Wiping out a guild town would be child's play for this frightening army. If Beast Emperor wanted to, he could easily drag them into this fight. Zero Wing, do you think that just because I exhausted a large portion of my forces at Crimson Flame Fortress, you will have an opportunity to strike? Beast Emperor sneered at the distant Zero Wing army from atop the city walls. Unfortunately, 100,000 players aren't even enough to serve as a warm-up. Previously, to assist Blackwater, he had exhausted a lot of his forces. During the battle to acquire the Crimson Flame Fortress, he had lost a total of 6 mythic evil beasts and mythic evil demons. The number of Grand Lords and Great Lords he lost was also massive. Even so, he still had 7 mythic monsters under his control, 5 of which were evil beasts and 2 were evil demons. For this upcoming battle, he intended to use the 5 mythic evil beasts as the main force, while reserving the 2 mythic evil demons as a trump card. Although his current army was far from ideal, it was more than enough to stop Zero Wing's army. In reality, he wished that he could avoid pitting his army against Zero Wing's, utilizing his defender's advantage to whittle the enemy forces down. However, as he was responsible for summoning the Evil God's Branch Temple in Ancient Rock City, he was responsible for protecting Ancient Rock City. He could not allow any damage to come to the city. If the city were damaged, not only would he have to spend his own money to repair it, but he would also lose Evil God's Temple contribution points. Boss, Blackwater's members are in position. Blackwater has dispatched 3,000 experts and 20,000 elites. In addition, 9 Dragons Emperor has dispatched a 1,000-man expert legion. Roughly 7,000 dark players are also participating in this battle. Once we crush Zero Wing's formation, these players will eliminate Zero Wing's members, Wind Hunter reported. A bunch of scavengers. But so be it. In any case, we just need the corpses. It doesn't matter who dies in the end. Beast Emperor said, sneering. Boss, I also received a report stating that a 1,000-man team from Zero Wing has left Silverwing Town and is heading toward the Dark Witch's Tower. I'm not sure what that team is trying to do, but the members are all considerably well equipped, Wind Hunter said. The Dark Witch's Tower? Isn't that a teleportation point for the dark players? Why is Zero Wing sending people there? Beast Emperor was confused. Could they be trying to attack the Dark Witch's Tower while they attack Ancient Rock City? That shouldn't be the case. That's the Dark Witch's Tower we're talking about. Not only is it guarded by several hundred dark NPCs, but there are also 3,000 to 4,000 dark players there on a regular basis, Wind Hunter said in surprise. Even if it's true, it doesn't matter. Zero Wing is doomed regardless of what it does, Beast Emperor said, narrowing his eyes. I recall that Dust Edge is questing in that area. Tell him to head to the tower just in case. Chapter 1868, Barrier Destroyed. When they saw the 3 divine magic dragons, the rowdy evil beasts and demons fell silent. Each of the divine magic dragons had a wingspan of 600 meters. Just a flap of their wings would be more than enough to kill hundreds of players. Even the spectating crowd could feel their auras from several thousand yards away. The ambient mana on the battlefield also gathered to the divine magic dragons, and just a flap of their wings caused powerful storms to brew. Pitch-black spatial tears appeared as their wings passed. Even many of Zero Wing's members were shocked to see the divine magic dragons. Although most of the Zero Wing members had seen the battle videos depicting these dragons, they had never seen one up close. The combined pressure 3 divine magic dragons exuded was so powerful that even Tier 2 experts felt their bodies grow heavy and their chests constrict, not to mention Tier 1 players. The divine magic dragons are so powerful. Is this the power of a dragon? I knew our guild must have had a trump card. 1 divine magic dragon was already enough to suppress 3 mythic evil beasts. Now that we have 3 divine magic dragons, I can't wait to see how Beast Emperor and his minions stand against us. Many of Zero Wing's members had still been afraid of the evil beast and demon army before them. After all, there were 5 level 80 mythic evil beasts standing between their army and Ancient Rock City. Even if they had 200 miniature ballistas on their side, they would still pay a horrific price to get through these monsters. However, now that they had 3 divine magic dragons on their side, the battle had turned in their favor. While everyone struggled with their shock, under Aqua Rose's command, the 3 divine magic dragons flapped their wings and flew toward Ancient Rock City. Although the 5 evil earth dragons tried to stop the divine magic dragons, the divine magic dragons were too fast. Under Shadow Sword, Flying Shadow and Minor Wind's control, the 3 divine magic dragons easily avoided the mythic evil beast's attacks and sent their glowing, dark purple claws smashing into Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. Boom. The 3 divine magic dragons' claws struck the defensive magic array simultaneously, the force behind their powerful attacks instantly creating 3 intense storms that spread around them. Meanwhile, the magic barrier protecting ancient rock city shook violently, dimming considerably. Seeing this, Beast Emperor's expression darkened. The various major powers' upper echelons who watched via magic mirrors were astonished. What a powerful attack! When the various superpowers had assaulted ancient rock city, that barrier hadn't even faltered under a tier 4 attack, yet it's trembling after those divine magic dragons struck it. It seems the dragon's damage exceeds the barrier's threshold. At this rate, it will take no time at all to deplete the magic array's energy reserves. 3 divine magic dragons? I hadn't thought that Zero Wing still had such a trump card. It's no wonder why it dares provoke Beast Emperor. It seems Zero Wing really is confident of striking down ancient rock city. The various upper echelons were similarly shocked by the 3 divine magic dragons' power. However, while they were shocked, they weren't particularly afraid. After all, tools that could summon such powerful monsters certainly weren't indefinite. It simply wasn't a permanent source of strength. Damn it! Just one attack from those dragons depleted nearly 6% of the magic array's energy reserves. We can't let those dragons continue to attack the barrier. Activate the evil god's temple's offensive magic array and annihilate these dragons. Beast Emperor hurriedly commanded when he saw the defensive magic array's energy reserves. Boss, it'll cost us 3,000 CPs to activate the offensive magic array once. I don't want to see the defensive magic array destroyed. Beast Emperor growled as the divine magic dragons launched their second wave of attacks. If the defensive magic array fell, anybody could enter ancient rock city. If the divine magic dragons entered the city, they would wreak unimaginable destruction. As Beast Emperor finished speaking, the defensive magic array lost another 6% of its energy. Seeing this, Wind Hunter bit his tongue. Hurriedly, he activated the evil god's temple's offensive magic array. Suddenly, a gigantic dark gray magic array formed above the evil god's branch temple, located in the center of ancient rock city. The magic array enveloped the city lord's mansion. Even Zero Wing's members who stood several thousand yards away, noticed this sudden development. Due to the appearance of this magic array, the mana inside and around ancient rock city was obliterated. Now there was not a single trace of mana in the area. Die. After activating the offensive magic array, Wind Hunter aimed and fired at the 3 divine magic dragons. He instantly lost 3,000 evil god's temple contribution points. Meanwhile, several hundred dark gray longswords shot out of the dark gray magic array, reaching the divine magic dragons in the blink of an eye. However, to Flying Shadow and the others, who controlled the divine magic dragons, the attack wasn't fast enough to be unstoppable. Immediately, the trio controlled the divine magic dragons to swipe at the approaching swords. Boom. The instant the divine magic dragon's claws met the long swords, however, Flying Shadow and the others felt their arms numb. Several dozen long swords then sliced into them. Suddenly, one deafening explosion after another rang out above ancient rock city, radiating shockwaves that even made the city's defensive magic array tremble. Following which, the 3 divine magic dragons crashed to the ground, creating 3 deep craters where they fell. Some low-ranking evil beasts and evil demons even died as they were crushed. After a few moments, the 3 divine magic dragons stood back up. Now, however, wounds covered their bodies and many of their tough dragon scales had been shattered. Their wings had also been destroyed, preventing flight. Even more frightening was the fact that these dragons couldn't regenerate the damage the dark gray swords had caused. Everyone gasped when they saw the horrific attack. What a powerful move. The various major powers were dazed for a long moment. They had witnessed the power of the divine magic dragons, so they knew just how powerful these summoned creatures were, yet Beast Emperor had injured them heavily with a single move. Beast Emperor's foundations clearly exceeded their estimations. After such a devastating blow, it was almost impossible for Zero Wing to capture ancient rock city. The evil beast army had surrounded the divine magic dragons soon after they had fallen, and Zero Wing's summoned creatures were embroiled in a heated battle. They couldn't even reach ancient rock city. With only the miniature ballistas and its players' attacks, Zero Wing would need hours of non-stop combat to destroy the city's barrier. Big Sis Aqua, I'm struggling to control my divine magic dragon. Even fighting the mythic evil beasts is taxing. I can't approach Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array at all. What should we do? Flying Shadow, who currently controlled a divine magic dragon, reported. It felt as if he were trying to control a broken machine. Not only were the divine magic dragon's reactions delayed, but the dragon's strength had also fallen. Sure enough, trying to strike down Ancient Rock City won't be easy. Aqua Rose could not help but sigh. Since that is the case, let's go all out. The three of you, use the divine magic dragon's final power. Understood. Flying Shadow, Shadow Sword, and Minor Wind nodded to Aqua Rose's command. In the next moment, the three divine magic dragons released furious roars, the resulting shockwaves shoving back the great lord-ranked evil beasts. Suddenly, the divine magic dragons spread their jaws as a threefold magic array manifested before them. The three dragons then fired 3 black-white breath attacks at Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. This move was the strongest these divine magic dragons possessed. Tier 4 Curse, Shadowlight Breath. In the blink of an eye, all 3 breath attacks plowed into the barrier around Ancient Rock City. After persisting for 2 seconds, the indestructible magic barrier shattered, transforming into countless particles of light before it disappeared. Chapter 1869, Dark Witch's Tower. As the magic barrier protecting Ancient Rock City disappeared, the distant spectating players' mouths fell wide open. They simply could not bring themselves to believe that the 3 heavily injured divine magic dragons actually destroyed such a powerful defensive magic array. Damn it! How is this possible? Beast Emperor's complexion became incredibly gloomy when he saw the magic barrier disappearing. The magic barrier was the protective canopy of Ancient Rock City. Without it, anybody could enter and leave the city freely as well as rain destruction upon the city. Before Beast Emperor could react, Aqua Rose raised her staff and commanded, "Miniature ballistas, advance. Attack Ancient Rock City with everything you've got." In the next moment, all 200 miniature ballistas started closing in on Ancient Rock City. When Heaven's Burial took control of Ancient Rock City, the guild had repaired and constructed defensive structures around the city. However, after the evil god's temple took over, as evil demons and evil beasts lacked the knowledge and ability to control these defensive structures, these things all became decorations. As a result, the miniature ballistas could approach Ancient Rock City with impunity. Ancient Rock City soon entered the miniature ballistas' attack range. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Immediately, 200 exploding arrows flew into the sky and pelted down on the buildings inside Ancient Rock City, following which a series of blasts reverberated throughout the city. Just one volley of arrows already flattened many buildings in the city's outer area. They dare. Beast Emperor felt his heart bleed when he saw many of the accommodations for evil demons getting razed. He angrily commanded all of his evil beasts and evil demons, "Go. Destroy every one of those ballistas." At this moment he no longer cared about the defense of the city. All he cared about was the destruction of Zero Wing's miniature ballistas. Meanwhile, due to the miniature ballistas' attacks, the evil beasts and evil demons controlled by NPCs belonging to the evil god's temple also took action. These powerful monsters joined the evil beasts and evil demons under Beast Emperor's control in charging toward Zero Wing's army. Suddenly, a swarm of monsters could be seen rushing toward Zero Wing's army. This scene made the Zero Wing members handling the miniature ballistas shudder involuntarily. However, Aqua Rose remained utterly unfazed by this situation, immediately ordering the activation of the movement-type defensive magic array. A moment later, a magic barrier enveloped the entire army. Miniature ballistas focus on those monsters. Everyone else, coordinate your attacks with the ballistas. Flying Shadow, your group will deal with those mythic monsters. Everyone in Zero Wing's army responded quickly and started executing Aqua Rose's commands. Although the monsters were numerous and high-leveled, their side also possessed a defensive magic array. As long as the defensive magic array held, these evil demons and evil beasts could not hurt them. Not to mention their side also had the firepower of 200 miniature ballistas. For a time, the miniature ballistas could be seen continuously firing exploding arrows at the approaching evil demons and evil beasts, the resulting blasts even sending the great lords stumbling backward. The lords that got struck were immediately placed in a heavily injured state. As for the chieftains, they got killed with just a few shots. In the meantime, Zero Wings members were also launching attacks in a frenzy from inside the defensive magic array. However, despite Zero Wings' fierce offensive, the evil demon and evil beast army showed no signs of stopping. They assaulted Zero Wings' defensive magic array relentlessly, depleting its energy reserves. As the evil beasts and evil demons died one after another, the energy reserves of Zero Wings' defensive magic array also declined rapidly. This forced Aqua Rose to replenish its energy repeatedly using magic crystals. For a time, the sounds of roars, slaughter and explosions became the main theme of this hilly land. In this battlefield, an individual's strength was extremely insignificant. Only the magical class players capable of using large-scale spells were slightly more useful than the average player. The magnificent battle stupefied the spectating players. The dark players who had been planning to ambush Zero Wings' army simply stood still right now, none of them daring to join the fray. After all, the level of this battle exceeded their understanding of battles between players. In this conflict, individual techniques were absolutely meaningless. If they dared charge into the battlefield, let alone reaching Zero Wings' army, just crossing the miniature ballista's field of fire was already plenty difficult. With the defensive magic array up, they wouldn't even get to touch Zero Wings members. They would only become live targets for Zero Wings members if they entered the fray now. Meanwhile, as Zero Wings' army was fighting a war of attrition with Beast Emperor, Shifeng's team of 1,000 arrived at a location a short distance from the Dark Witch's Tower. The Dark Witch's Tower stood next to a small lake inside a valley. The environment around the tower was considerably good. In fact, this place was originally a nice town. Unfortunately, an undead Great Wizard had targeted the town and turned it into a place of death. The Great Wizard had also specifically constructed the Dark Witch's Tower here to research death magic. As more time passed, the town here became a locus for the dark forces. At this point, it was already a resting place for dark players in the Or Empire. When Shifeng's team moved within 3,000 yards of the Dark Witch's Tower, sirens in the town suddenly rang, putting every player inside the town on high alert. Someone actually dares approach the gathering place of us dark players. It should be a team that lost their way. With so many of us dark players here, who would possibly dare approach this place willingly? Lost their way? Whatever. This is a good opportunity. I haven't completed my kill quest for today. It's not a bad idea to use these players as a sacrifice. The dark players inside the Dark Witch's Tower all started laughing and chatting merrily, convinced that this team of players was a bunch of fools to have actually stumbled upon the Dark Witch's Tower. After all, these players had not investigated which places normal players should avoid in the Or Empire. As the dark forces were relatively weak on the continent of God's domain, the dark forces' gathering spots and neutral maps would all have alarms set up to help the gathering spots' residents to take precautions to protect themselves. These alarms would give out a warning when over 100 normal players or NPCs entered a certain range of the gathering spot. They really came. A black-clad man covered in bandages who was enjoying a glass of wine in the town's bar could not help but smile when he heard the town's alarms going off. He then turned to look at the beautiful woman dressed in dark blue robes sitting beside him and asked, "Will Commander Spirit take action first, or shall I do the honors? Although I very much wish to repay Zero Wing for what it did to my adventurer team, I am more curious about how capable the treasured apostle nurtured by Beast Emperor is," Veiled Spirit replied, smiling as she looked at the bandaged man beside her. Nowadays, Beast Emperor was extremely famous among dark players. After all, he controlled an army of evil beasts and evil demons, a force that nobody could afford to underestimate. Meanwhile, although Dust Edge himself did not possess much fame, Beast Emperor had praised him highly and even agreed to cooperate with Dark Soul so long as the Alliance provided Dust Edge with as many resources as possible. Seeing as Beast Emperor was willing to invest so many resources in a single person, it was obvious just how much Beast Emperor valued Dust Edge's potential. Beast Emperor and Dark Soul had been acquainted with each other for quite some time already, yet Dark Soul had yet to dig up any information on Dust Edge even now. Zero Wing's arrival presented Veiled Spirit with a good opportunity to witness Dust Edge's abilities. She naturally wouldn't let it go to waste. Fine, then let's treat this as the beginning of the mutual trust between our two sides, Dust Edge said, nodding. He then raised his wine glass and added, they should be very close to reaching the town walls now. Let us head out as well. After saying so, Dust Edge stood up and left the bar. Veiled Spirit and the dozen or so subordinates that came with her followed after him. Chapter 1870 Helltank's Might. A large number of dark players had gathered in the Dark Witch's Tower's watchtower, gazing down at Zero Wing's members as they fell into formation in the distance. What? They actually planned to attack the Dark Witch's Tower? They're insane. Hundreds of NPCs guard the town, not to mention the defense turrets and arrow towers. Repelling a 1,000-man team isn't even a warm-up. The dark players could not help but laugh, ridiculing Zero Wing as they watched Shi Feng and his companions prepare for the assault. Although the Dark Witch's Tower was a very small town, it had robust defenses. Not only did the town have defensive structures, but it also had a defensive magic array. Furthermore, thousands of dark players occupied the town. Even an army of tens of thousands of elite players would fall swiftly if it tried to attack the town, let alone a 1,000-man force. Even a superpower would have to pay a hefty price to destroy the Dark Witch's Tower. This was why most superpowers simply ignored this dark player hub. Look at their guild emblems. They seem to be Zero Wing's members, a Tier 2 ranger stated, surprised after using eagle eyes. Isn't Zero Wing attacking Ancient Rock City? Why has it come all the way here to attack the Dark Witch's Tower? They must have gotten the wrong memo from their superiors, a level 56 assassin said, laughing. But since they're here, we can have some fun. Blackwater has offered a generous bounty for Zero Wing's heads. Normally, Zero Wing's members are very challenging prey, but this is a golden opportunity. We have over 3,000 players in the Dark Witch's Tower. Wiping out this 1,000-man team will be a piece of cake. We can't let the town's NPCs get to them first. The various dark players present in the Dark Witch's Tower didn't take these Zero Wing members seriously in the least. Rather, all they saw as they looked at their enemies were walking sacks of cash. Meanwhile, Dust Edge and Veiled Spirit's group had left the Dark Witch's Tower's walls and quietly observed Zero Wing's team, astonishment flashing in their eyes. All of these Zero Wing members were merely elites. Aside from the 100 or so players that wore black cloaks, every member of the force was a Tier 1 player. Moreover, they could tell that the 100-plus cloaked players weren't actually combatants, so they were even weaker than Zero Wing's elite members. Big Sis Spirit, is Zero Wing attempting suicide? It's actually attacking the Dark Witch's Tower with such a team? With such standards, we won't even need to get involved. The town's usual players are more than enough to eliminate this force, a level 57 Tier 2 berserker said, clicking his tongue as he observed Zero Wing's team. They had come all the way to the Dark Witch's Tower precisely because they had heard that Zero Wing might attack the town, but this 1,000-man team was simply disappointing. It would have a painful time just trying to reach the town's gates, let alone destroying the Dark Witch's Tower. Veiled Spirit pondered the situation in silence. She couldn't figure out what Zero Wing was trying to do. This is indeed disappointing. I had wanted to give Zero Wing a taste of an evil god's apostle's might, but this team isn't worth the effort. Just let the dark players handle them, Dust Edge said, shaking his head. Since that is the case, there's no longer a need for us to stay. The battle in Ancient Rock City is growing increasingly intense. If we hurry, we should be able to claim some scraps. Veiled Spirit agreed with Dust Edge's estimation. They couldn't afford to casually reveal either Shadow Claw or Dust Edge's trump cards. Using them against a 1,000-man expert team from Zero Wing might be worth it, but it would be a waste to use them on a 1,000-man elite team. As Veiled Spirit and the others prepared to leave, the town's dark players were about to make their move. Over 2,000 dark players charged out of the town, not even bothering to organize themselves into any formation as they rushed towards Zero Wing's members. Dark players like them had already participated and grown familiar with large-scale combat. They might have taken the battle seriously if this zero-wing force had quite a few experts, but all of these players were elites or weaker. Players of such standards weren't worth a serious effort. As the 2,000-plus dark players approached, Zero Wing's elite members began to grow nervous. Guild leader, they're less than 1,000 yards away, a level 55 Tier 1 ranger anxiously reported to Shifeng. The dark players charging toward them were veterans of outdoor PvP, and every one of these dark players radiated a dense bloodlust. Over 40 Tier 2 experts ran among these dark players. On the other hand, they rarely participated in PvP, usually focusing on raiding team dungeons. Defeating elite players like them would be a piece of cake for these dark players. Good. Engineering team, begin the assembly, Shifeng ordered, nodding. In a moment, the engineering team will be responsible for the offensive. The rest of you just need to focus on defending our position. Hearing Shifeng's command, the cloaked engineers removed their black cloaks and retrieved the Hell Tank's components from their bags. When Zero Wing's elite players saw the 100 level 40-plus lifestyle players, they were stunned. They had hoped that these cloaked players were exceptionally strong. They had never expected these comrades to be lifestyle players. On top of that, these lifestyle players were going to fight. When the distant dark players saw the level 40-plus lifestyle players, they were just as stunned. However, their expressions quickly soured, becoming serious. The 100 engineers swiftly assembled 6 colossal tanks, and despite the 1,000 yards separating them, the dark players could hear the engine-whistle roar as the tank's immense power swept over them. Good. 800 yards ahead. Fire at will. Shifeng issued the command once the 6 Hell Tanks were ready for battle. Under Shifeng's command, the engineers' eyes glowed with excitement as they operated their Hell Tanks. They then aimed the Hell Cannons at the dark players and fired. Suddenly, a crimson two-fold magic array appeared before each Hell Tank's gun barrel. Boom! Immediately, the 6 Hell Cannons released balls of crimson light. These crimson light balls reached the dark players almost instantly. By the time the dark players reacted, the light balls had descended on the disorderly crowd. Boom. The moment the crimson light balls struck, 6 towering pillars of fire rose up amidst the dark player army, each encompassing a radius of 35 yards. The towering flame pillars were clearly visible from several thousand yards away. As the flame pillars faded, they revealed 6 lava pits on the battlefield, glowing with a red light. Every player that had been caught in the AoEs had transformed into streaks of white light before disappearing. With a single round of attacks, over 600 dark players had been removed from the battlefield. Brothers, we're almost at the war weapons. Once we destroy them, victory will be ours. Ranged players, attack with everything you've got once you're in range. The dark players couldn't help their excitement as they reduced the distance between them and the Hell Tanks to 50 yards. At this time, Shifeng raised his longsword into the air. He then pointed it at the approaching dark players and shouted, "All Hell Tanks, move out. Leave none of them alive." The engineers, itching for action, eagerly stepped on the tank's accelerator. The engines roared to life once more, and the 6 Hell Tanks jerked forward, speeding towards the dark players in a V formation. What are they trying to do? The advancing dark players were stunned as the Hell Tanks raced towards them. However, before the dark players could react, each Hell Tank released 14 flame spears. Meanwhile, each flame spear carried power at the peak of Tier 2. A total of 84 flame spears flew at the dark players simultaneously, as if 84 miniature ballistas had launched their payload at the same time, but unlike the ballista's exploding arrows, the flame spears weren't AoEs. Shio, shio, shio. When the flame spears made contact, light flashed among the dark player army. Many of the melee players leading the charge, who had failed to defend themselves in time, transformed into stakes of light and vanished on the spot. Although some players had activated life-saving skills or dodged the attacks in time, surviving the first volley, the flame spears had claimed over 50 dark players' lives. However, the surviving melee players slid to a halt once more, too afraid to approach the Hell Tanks after watching that wave of attacks. Ranged players, hurry and attack. Some melee players shouted, snapping out of their daze. The dark-ranked players then launched spells and arrows, aiming for the approaching hell tanks. Just as the spells and arrows were about to slam into the hell tanks, the 6 war weapons activated their magic shields. A magic barrier, able to absorb up to 3 million damage and possessing Tier 3 defensive capabilities, surrounded each hell tank. The hell tanks pushed through the rain of spells and arrows, receiving no damage whatsoever. How is this possible? Seeing the unscathed hell tanks stunned the dark players. They had never thought that these war weapons had defensive magic arrays as well. As the dark players tried to think of a way to deal with the enemy weapons, the hell tanks reached the melee players that led the army. Without slowing in the slightest, the hell tanks bulldozed through the dark players in their way. The Tier 2 MTs at the forefront were immediately thrown over 20 yards back, their HPs decreasing by nearly half. Unfortunately for them, the Tier 1 melee players died instantly. The 6 hell tanks charged forward like a herd of stampeding bulls. Not only did they break up the crowd of dark players, but they also killed over 100 players as they sped through. Run. Run quickly. Don't let these things get near you. After watching the hell tanks slaughter their allies, the fighting dark players realized one thing. This battle wasn't a battle at all. It was a one-sided massacre. It's too late to escape now. Xianxia could not help but shake his head and chuckle as he watched the fleeing dark players. Compared to their ranged defensive capabilities, tanks shone brightest in close-range combat. An intermediate tank had even higher strength than a Tier 3 berserker, and not even a Tier 3 assassin could outrun it. It was truly a weapon of slaughter on a battlefield. After just a short moment, the hell tanks killed every one of the 2,000-plus dark players that had participated in the battle. Now, ownerless weapons and equipment littered the field. Chapter 1872. Evil God Takes Action. Once the hell tanks had wiped out the attacking dark players, Xianxia instructed his guildmates to loot the battlefield. The dark players that operated in the Orc Empire were very well equipped on average. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to join the glory battlefield that was the Empire. Fortunately, Xianxia could use the weapons and equipment these dark players had dropped as compensation for the magic crystals the hell tanks had expended and to make a small profit. Naturally, he wouldn't leave the items for other players to loot. However, Zero Wings members only took action sometime after Xianxia had given the order. They had still been stunned at the hell tanks' performance. Before these hell tanks, Tier 2 experts were a joke. They couldn't even escape the hell tanks' destruction. Despite the 1,000-plus surviving dark players fleeing for their lives in every direction, the 6 war weapons annihilated them all. Zero Wings members watched the war weapons, their eyes sparkling as if they gazed at a piece of top-tier equipment. These tanks are amazing. I can't wait to see how these dark players plan to maintain their arrogance around Silverwing Town now that we have these tanks. I wonder if the guild will give a similar tank to the guild teams? If every 1,000-man legion had 5 or 6 of these things, we'd be unstoppable in the fields. Keep dreaming. How could the guild casually afford to arm a guild team with such powerful tanks? I'd be satisfied if my team had just one of these tanks, not to mention 5 or 6. While Zero Wings members cleared the battlefield of items, they softly discussed the guild's new war weapons. When Xianxia overheard these discussions, he couldn't help his bitter smile. The necessary materials to produce the hell tank were extremely precious. He had already depleted the materials the guild had fought to collect to craft the 6 hell tanks before him. If he wanted to produce more, he would have to rely on guild members to collect the necessary materials from team dungeons. After all, team dungeons had cooldowns and not every team dungeon dropped the necessary materials. Grinding for the necessary materials wouldn't be possible. However, his team members' comments did remind him of something. He could arm the Zero Wing teams that patrolled around Silverwing Town with the hell tanks. Although doing so would cost a lot of magic crystals and rapidly deplete the hell tank's durability, it would significantly increase Silverwing Town's security. Current players were no match for these war weapons, and several hell tanks could end a battle of several thousand players within minutes. After his team had cleaned up the battlefield, Xianxia ordered the 6 hell tanks to bombard the Dark Witch's tower. Now that more than half of the dark players in the town had died, the remaining dark players posed no threat. All they had to do was destroy the town's defensive magic array. Then they could storm the town and destroy its magic array core and teleportation device. Once those had been destroyed, they would rend the Dark Witch's tower powerless. Zero Wings coming. What should we do? Meanwhile, the dark players who had watched the battle from the town's watchtower wore ugly expressions as they gazed at Zero Wings members. Over 2,000 expert players had died in just a few minutes. To make matters worse, not a single one of them had killed any of Zero Wings players. This was utterly terrifying. These dark players had been confident that Zero Wings members couldn't touch the Dark Witch's tower, much less destroy the town. However, after witnessing the Hell Tank's destructive power and their ridiculous movement speed, they realized that the town's defense turrets and arrow towers would be useless against the enemy war weapons. So, this is the trump card Zero Wing has hidden all this time? Even Veiled Spirit was a little afraid as the 6 tanks approached the town. Although she had prepared a trump card in the form of a magic array that enhanced players' power, she wasn't certain that any player at this stage of the game could stop those tanks, regardless of their buffs. Not bad. It's no wonder why Zero Wing only sent a 1,000-man elite team here. It turns out that they've prepared such a move. Dust Edge gave the Hell Tanks a bright smile. I hadn't thought that those players were worth my involvement, but it seems that they just barely qualify. You have a way to defeat them? Veiled Spirit asked curiously as she gave Dust Edge, who brimmed with confidence, a look. Of course. I can also use this opportunity to show you your collaborator's strength, Dust Edge said, nodding. However, I will require some sacrifices. Do you mind if I trouble you to capture some? Sacrifices? Veiled Spirit repeated, confused. I'm talking about players. I need a large number of players. The more the better. Since this is a hub for the dark forces, these NPCs won't mind if players slaughter each other. And the remaining players in the Dark Witch's tower aren't particularly valuable anymore anyway, right? Dust Edge asked, chuckling as he eyed the dark players as they tried to flee from the town. I'll also need to borrow 2 of your peak experts. Pi subordinates? Veiled Spirit frowned, turning to Dust Edge with a frosty expression. Although she did not know why he needed sacrifices, it definitely wasn't for something good. She refused to allow her subordinates to become this madman's sacrifices. Relax. I won't sacrifice your subordinates. Rather, I want to grant them peerless strength. Dust Edge explained when he realized that Veiled Spirit had misunderstood his intention. That won't be a problem. Veiled Spirit agreed. She then instructed her subordinates to gather the feeling players in the Dark Witch's tower. This time she had brought 300 experts with her, each of which was incredibly powerful. They were far stronger than the dark players who idled in the town. Under Veiled Spirit's command, Shadow Claw's 300 experts took action. Using the tools Dust Edge had granted them, they captured the players that tried to escape the town. What are you trying to do? Why are you capturing us? Shadow Claw's prisoners soon found themselves bound by magical chains, their fear clear on their faces as they looked at Dust Edge and his companions. Oh, it's nothing. I'm just going to make you contribute to the Dark Witch's tower's defense, Dust Edge said, laughing when he saw over 300 bound players. You should feel so lucky to become a part of my new power. Hurry it up. Zero Wings team is starting its attack. The town's defensive magic array won't last long. Veiled Spirit snapped anxiously as she watched the 6 Hell Tanks fire upon the Dark Witch's tower. Although the Dark Witch's tower had a defensive magic array to protect it, it was much weaker than the one around Ancient Rock City. If Tier 3 large-scale destruction spells bombarded it, it wouldn't last long. Relax. My preparations are complete. Now we just need 2 of your subordinates to stand in the center of the magic array. Dust Edge responded as he finished writing over 30 lines of crimson divine runes in the air. He then merged the divine runes with the crimson magic array before him, excitedly proclaiming, "Soon you'll get to witness the power of the almighty evil god." At Dust Edge's words, the 2 experts Veiled Spirit had chosen began to panic as they stared at the magic array. However, when their leader urged them forward, they had no choice but to steel their resolve and step into the array. Almighty evil God, I offer you immortal souls. Please grant me an immortal body to smite my enemies. Dust Edge sang before tapping the butt of his staff on the array. The 300-plus dark players inside the magic array instantly collapsed like puppets as their strings were cut. In the next moment the space above tore, leaving a gaping black wound. A boundless aura then poured out of the spatial tear, and everything within the Dark Witch's tower froze within its presence. Chapter 1873, Evil Dragon's Power. The appearance of the spatial tear above the Dark Witch's tower immobilized every player inside the town. It was as if time around them had stopped. What kind of monster is in there? Veiled Spirit and the others could not help but be frightened when they felt the horrific pressure flooding out of the spatial tear. They could sense that this horrific pressure did not originate from the spatial tear itself but from a creature residing inside the spatial tear instead. This was a pressure that they had never felt in all the time they'd played God's domain. They did not doubt that, should the creature inside the spatial tear come out, they would instantly die and disappear just from the pressure the creature exuded. A few seconds after the spatial tear appeared, the two Shadow Claw members standing inside the Crimson Magic Array started screaming in agony, their lung-piercing shrieks giving all who heard them goosebumps. Dust Edge, didn't you say nothing would happen to them? Veiled Spirit questioned, a chilly expression appearing on her face as she glared at Dust Edge. The two members she selected were peak experts of Shadow Claw. They were also one of the few Tier 2 experts the adventurer team had. If their accounts were to get crippled due to this incident, Shadow Claw would sustain a tremendous blow. Relax, they'll be fine. In fact, once the ritual is over, they'll feel much better than before. You can even label them as the strongest players in existence in God's domain right now. Dust Edge explained, laughing as he looked at the two Shadow Claw members in the magic array. Veiled Spirit was utterly confused by Dust Edge's words. Just as she was about to demand a clearer explanation from him, the two people standing inside the magic array suddenly started transforming. Originally, the two people were already tall and robust men. Now, however, their muscles started bulging rapidly like balloons. Very quickly, their bodies lost their human form. A pair of dark gray wings sprouted out of their backs and silver scales covered their bodies. The transformation process continued for roughly 7 seconds and produced two 10-meter-tall dragons. The two dragons then let loose deafening roars that echoed throughout the town. Dragons! Veiled Spirit and the others could not help but be stupefied by this sight. They could clearly feel that the two dragons before them were different from the pseudo-dragons they had come across before. Although the two dragons before them were only level 56 _ the same level as the players themselves _ they could feel a pressure coming from the dragons that was a result of a difference in life ratings. This meant that the two dragons before them were not pseudo-dragon creatures but real dragons. They're still not at the level of real dragons. However, they have been given new life by the evil god. Although their life ratings are not at the standard of dragons, they should be at the level of archaic species. You can call them evil dragons, Dust Edge said as he looked at the two evil dragons. With a hint of excitement in his tone, he continued, unlike lowly evil demons, evil dragons are players. They are somewhat similar to the dark mutation you guys have, but the transformation is more thorough than dark mutation. Moreover, it is also much stronger. At this moment they are already at the Tier 3 standard. They possess greater power and life force than even Tier 3 NPCs of the same level. Of course, this is not their peak strength, yet my power is still incomplete right now. I'll need many more resources to unlock my strength. Once I have fully grasped this power, I'll be able to make them even stronger. Evil dragons? Veiled Spirit was shocked as she looked at the massive creatures before her. No wonder Beast Emperor is willing to nurture you at all costs. Dark mutation was something she was very familiar with. However, dark mutation raised only a player's combat power. The improvement was not sufficient for a qualitative transformation. The two players that had turned into evil dragons, however, had undergone a qualitative transformation. Not only had their tiers increased by 1, but even their life ratings now rivaled that of archaic species. In other words, the two players before her already possessed the strength of level 56, Tier 3 archaic species. This was simply frightening. A Tier 3 archaic species was originally already extremely difficult to deal with. After all, the attributes such a monster possessed were simply too much for current players to handle. The only saving grace was that the combat standards of monsters were relatively low on average. They also grasped very few skills. If players cooperated properly, defeating such a monster was still possible. However, a player transformed into a Tier 3 archaic species would be an absolute nightmare for current players. Not to mention, said player would be able to control their new body as if it were their own. Let alone a 100-man team of Tier 2 experts. Even a 1,000-man team of Tier 2 experts would be no match for such a player. Just thinking about meeting such a player on a battlefield made Veiled Spirit shudder in fear. The destructive power of such a player would far exceed that of a Tier 4 mythic monster controlled by players. How do you two feel right now? Are you still accustomed to your bodies? Veiled Spirit asked the two evil dragon players curiously. When players transformed their bodies using dark mutation, they would initially have trouble adapting to their new bodies. Now that the two players before her had taken on a form that was nothing like the human body, chances were high that they would have great difficulty controlling their bodies. I've never felt better. Even without concentrating, I can easily grasp the movements in my surroundings. I can even hear the conversation of two players that are hiding behind a wall 200 yards away. Indeed. Those two are actually planning to report our actions here to other dark players. Those two players are simply tired of living. After saying so, the two evil dragons flapped their wings, their massive bodies transforming into a powerful gale as they flew toward the two hidden players. By the time the two hidden players noticed the two evil dragons' movements, the latter had already crossed a distance of 30 yards. Before the two expert players could move 30 yards away from their original hiding spot, the two massive evil dragons had already appeared before them and swiped their claws at them. In the next moment, Dust Edge and Veiled Spirit's group heard a loud bang coming from the evil dragon's direction. The ground the two level 55, Tier 2 experts stood on shattered instantly. As for the two experts themselves, they had died on the spot. What power! Veiled Spirit gasped involuntarily. Too strong. Too fast. Two Tier 2 experts were actually killed just like that. Even level 56 mythic monsters weren't capable of executing such a clean and swift attack. Meanwhile, the other Tier 2 experts of Shadowclaw also shrank back reflexively. Their reaction was because they'd imagined themselves in the place of those two Tier 2 experts and realized that they wouldn't fare all that much better than those two players either. They would almost certainly suffer the same fate as that unfortunate duo. Good. Very good. After witnessing the two evil dragon players killing two Tier 2 experts instantly, Dust Edge turned to look at Veiled Spirit and said proudly, "This is the evil god's temple's true power. What do you think? As long as you all have this power, let alone the Or Empire, even taking control of human empires won't be a problem." Indeed. Veiled Spirit nodded in agreement with Dust Edge's words. She too felt that the partnership between Dark Soul and Beast Emperor held great promise. As long as Dark Soul had a large number of evil dragons under its command, removing Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul from the Dark Knight Empire would be a piece of cake. "Alright, now that you two have warmed up, it's about time we go greet our guests," Dust Edge said, smiling as he turned to look at Zero Wings members, who were close to destroying the Dark Witch's Tower's defensive magic array already. At Dust Edge's words, the two evil dragon players promptly turned to look at the approaching hell tanks, sneers appearing on their faces. Previously they had still felt somewhat fearful of the hell tanks. Now, however, it was a different story. Following which, the two evil dragon players flapped their wings and swiftly flew out of the town's magic barrier and straight toward the hell tanks. Chapter 1874, Evil Dragon vs. Tank. As the two dark gray evil dragons ascended, leaving the Dark Witch's Tower, their massive frames, powerful roaring, and the intense pressure they radiated due to their upgraded life ratings quickly attracted Zero Wings' attention. Are those dragons? How does the Dark Witch's Tower have two dragons? How is this possible? They're actually Great Lord-ranked archaic species. Zero Wings members who stood some distance behind the hell tanks watched the two massive beasts fly away from the town with astonished expressions. They could not understand why dragons would be in the Dark Witch's Tower. Tier 3 archaic species were an absolute nightmare for current players, and although the two evil dragons were only level 56, they wouldn't be easy opponents. "Guild leader, what should we do? The dragons are too fast, slightly faster than the hell tanks. The engineers controlling the team's war weapons asked worriedly. As engineers, they were familiar with the Hell Tank's flaws. Although the Hell Tanks were extremely powerful against players, they were fairly useless against monsters. Monsters had much higher HP and defense, and if they pitted a Hell Tank against a Great Lord of the same level, it would take a considerable amount of time to defeat the monster with the Hell Cannon and Flame Spears. Furthermore, a Great Lord was considered a Tier 3 monster, so it would be more than capable of causing substantial damage to the Hell Tank, depleting its durability. If the two level 56 evil dragons were allowed to fight the Hell Tanks would definitely lose. Evil dragons? Shifeng watched the approaching dragons with a strange look. He could feel that these two were not actual dragons but pseudo-dragon creatures. If they were actual dragons, his heavenly dragon's breath would have given him a massive basic attribute boost. Since the fragmented legendary ring hadn't reacted, he knew that these evil dragons were something else. Moreover, he could sense the evil dragons' human-like emotions. When he looked in their eyes, it was as if the two evil dragons were children that had just found a new toy and were eager to play with it. That wasn't an emotion monsters should experience. Zero Wing die, the two evil dragons bellowed. The two evil dragons widened their jaws and spat a tornado-like breath attack. Space Tor was the attacks flew towards two of the 6 Hell Tanks. Since the attacks had been launched from a close distance, the Hell Tanks couldn't dodge in time. Boom. As the two tornadoes dissipated, they revealed the massive craters the attacks had torn in the ground, each encompassing a 50-yard radius with a 5-meter depth. Both of the Hell Tanks' magic shields had shattered instantly, and the power of the breath attacks left Zero Wing's members flabbergasted. Impossible. The dragons actually spoke. Are players controlling them? That can't be right. Even if they are controlled by players, they shouldn't be able to speak. Their destructive power is insane. They actually broke the magic shields that not even hundreds of Tier 1 and Tier 2 players could destroy. Everyone was shocked as they watched the Hell Tank's magic shields shatter, and the battlefield's new craters. The evil dragon's breath attack was clearly stronger than the Hell Tank's hell cannons, but the watching players were more confused by the dragon's ability to speak. Moreover, the dragon's words had been meant for Zero Wing. NPCs and monsters definitely weren't capable of such a thing. So, this is the power of the evil dragons? Veiled Spirit, who stood in the town's watchtower, was just as shocked by the evil dragon's power. With such great destructive power, these evil dragons would be of immense help when sieging a town or city. If Dust Edge could mass-produce such beings, the evil god's temple would truly be invincible in the Or Empire. Haha. Wonderful. Destroy Zero Wing's tanks and teach those players how foolish they really are. Dust Edge's eyes glowed with excitement as he watched the evil dragons. The two evil dragons were still incomplete, yet they had displayed such frightening prowess. Once he collected the remaining materials and perfected the magic array, he could create even stronger evil dragons. A measly guild like Zero Wing would pose no threat to the evil god's temple, and the temple would claim the Or Empire for its own. The two evil dragons nodded in response to Dust Edge's command, elation filling their hearts. The Hell Tanks, which had slaughtered thousands of dark players like helpless sheep, were now at their mercy. This newfound power was intoxicating. The two evil dragons flew toward the two Hell Tanks, which had lost their magic shields, and assaulted the war weapons with claw swipes. Crap. They're coming. The engineers controlling the Hell Tanks panicked and tried to move out of the dragon's way, but the creatures were too fast before the Hell Tanks could adjust their trajectory. The evil dragons had reached them, reaching towards the vehicles with their massive claws. Boom. The earth beneath the two tanks shattered as dust and dirt flew into the air due to the shockwave. As the dust settled, a new shocking scene was revealed. Dust Edge, Veiled Spirit, and their dark companions had assumed that the Hell Tanks were finished, but the two tanks were safe and sound. The evil dragon's claws had only left a few white scratches on their armored shells. How are they so tough? The two evil dragons stared at the tanks in astonishment. When their claws struck the Hell Tank's armor plating, they felt as if they had scratched an indestructible wall. Their claws even stung from the impact. Even the engineers were stunned. They hadn't realized that the Hell Tanks had such ridiculous defense. The evil dragon's claw attacks had only reduced each of the hell tanks' durability by 2 points. In other words, the evil dragons would have to land 200 claw attacks to destroy the war weapons. Stop daydreaming. All tanks, ignore the Dark Witch's tower and prioritize the evil dragons. Shifeng suddenly shouted through the team chat. He was not surprised in the least that the evil dragons had failed to do any substantial damage. After all, the hell tank's outer shell had been made with Titan Oregon normally. It was a material used to craft epic weapons and equipment. It wouldn't be easily destroyed by a Tier 3 archaic species. However, Shifeng was relieved that he had upgraded the hell tank's engines, increasing the vehicle's defensive capabilities. Otherwise, those claw attacks would have reduced the tank's durability by at least 4 points. After hearing Shifeng's command, the engineers promptly targeted the 2 monstrous dragons. Without hesitation, the 2 tanks before the monsters fired their hell cannons at the hovering evil dragons. 2 balls of crimson light then slammed into the evil dragons. Boom! The attacks, which had the power of a peak Tier 3 attack, sent the 2 monsters flying over 20 yards backward as the evil dragons cried out in pain. The 2 level 56, Tier 3 evil dragons did not possess as much HP as true Tier 3 archaic species. Each only had 28 million HP. A single hit from the hell cannons had devoured over 3 million HP. While the evil dragons flew back, the 2 tanks' engineers followed up with their flame spears. 14 flame spears bit into the 2 evil dragons simultaneously, each dealing over -60,000 damage. After taking all 14 spears, the 2 monsters had lost nearly 1 million HP. The other 4 hell tanks had reoriented themselves by this time, launching their own attacks. With how fast the hell cannons' projectiles were, the evil dragons had no time to dodge the attack. They were only able to block and dodge the flame spears from the other 4 tanks. In the end, the 2 evil dragons had lost more than 1/3 of their total HPs after suffering a round of attacks from all 6 hell cannons. To make matters worse, they were now injured, slightly affecting their combat powers. How is this possible? Dust Edge's eyes nearly fell from their sockets when he saw the massive dent in his dragon's HPs and the unscathed hell tanks. Chapter 1875 Zero Wings Guild Leader. Everyone was stunned as they watched the considerably injured evil dragons. Amazing! These hell tanks are so powerful. Now that the evil dragons are injured, we have a chance of winning. If the guild makes the hell tank available for exchange, I'll purchase one even if I have to go bankrupt. That thing is insane. Even a dragon is helpless against it. If I can use this hell tank when grinding and questing in the fields, I won't have to fear other players at all. Zero Wings members cheered as they looked at the 2 collapsed evil dragons. When they had first seen the evil dragon's prowess, they had thought they were doomed, but they had learned that not only did the hell tanks have the strength to overwhelm players, but the weapons could even contend with the horrific evil dragons. Normally, even a 100-man expert team would have to take the long way around a Tier 3 archaic species, yet these hell tanks had allowed a small number of players to fight 2 such monsters. They would definitely be invincible in the fields if they had the assistance of a hell tank. They were excited just thinking about it. Meanwhile, Veiled Spirit and the others who watched from inside the Dark Witch's tower wore gloomy expressions after the evil dragons had been beaten down. They had witnessed the strength of the evil dragon's strength personally. With those monsters' speed and destructive power, dealing with war weapons should be child's play, yet. Just how did Zero Wing get its hands on those tanks? Their defense is ridiculous. Envy and confusion swam in Veiled Spirit's gaze as she looked at the war weapons. She had never heard of such a war weapon in the game before. In her memory, war weapons had high destructive power but paper-thin defense. Yet these tanks' defense was heaven-defying. The hell tanks were godly weapons on a battlefield. Meanwhile, Zero Wing commanded such incredible weapons. You 2 hurry and distance yourselves from those tanks. Their movement speed and reaction speed is no match for yours. As long as you fight from a distance, those tanks will be useless. Once Dust Edge recovered from his momentary shock, he commanded his 2 evil dragons to take advantage of the hell tank's weaknesses. At the end of the day, the hell tanks were simply machines that players drove. Players couldn't control the weapons as smoothly as their own bodies. However, the evil dragons were a different story. These players had full and nimble control of the beasts' bodies. In addition, the evil dragons could fly had higher movement speed than the hell tanks. With the evil dragons' capabilities, it was definitely possible to whittle down and destroy the hell tanks without taking any damage. At most, doing so would take some time. The two evil dragon players were peak experts. They had merely failed to react to the hell tanks' attacks in time since the war weapons defense had taken them by surprise. Now that they had snapped out of their daze, they did as Dust Edge had instructed and put some distance between them and their targets. Although the strongest weapons of the evil dragons possessed were their breath and claw attacks, their ability to control wind and attack from a distance wasn't to be underestimated. When they flapped their wings, they could create storm blades that carried the power of Tier 3 attacks. Against the hell tanks that were incapable of flight and had delayed reactions, these storm blades would be an overwhelming advantage. They responded so quickly. Shifeng clicked his tongue as the evil dragons moved to attack from a distance. It's a pity that the Hell Cannon's power is only at the peak of Tier 3 and can't inflict severe injuries to these evil dragons. Otherwise, that round of attacks would have ended the battle. Guild leader, what should we do now? One of the engineers who drove the Hell tank Shifeng occupied asked. At this rate, those monsters will whittle us down until we die. Since the evil dragons had put some distance between them and the hell tanks, they could now dodge and block the tanks' flame spears easily. The evil dragons could also strike with their storm blades. By the time the drivers noticed the attacks, it would be too late to evade. Now that storm blades bombarded the hell tanks, they steadily lost durability. It was only a matter of time before the hell tanks ran out. It seems that we can't rely on the hell tanks to defeat these two monsters. After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng said, all tanks, group up and take up a defensive formation. Once your hell cannon's cooldown has ended, wait for my command to fire. We'll launch a concentrated assault on the evil dragons. The 6 hell tanks then circled, using their flame spears to prevent the evil dragon players from landing casual attacks. For a moment, the tanks' decreasing durability slowed. However, as the seconds passed by, the vehicle's durability rapidly depleted under the dragon's frenzied assault. 386. 357. 324. I'm pretty surprised with Zero Wing. I didn't think it actually had such a trump card. It's no wonder why it dares to raid the Dark Witch's tower with such a small team. Unfortunately, Zero Wing's luck will end here. I want to see how long those tanks can last against my evil dragons, Dust Edge said, chuckling as he watched the evil dragons suppress the hell tanks. Meanwhile, the Zero Wing members watching from a distance were extremely nervous. Although they wanted to help, they were powerless in this situation. The engineers who drove the hell tanks sweated with anxiety. 15 seconds had never felt like such a long time. Just as the hell cannon's cooldown was about to end, Shifeng leaped out of the hell tank, attracting the attention of everyone present. Guild leader. Zero Wing's members were stupefied as Shifeng suddenly emerged from his hell tank. The hell tanks were under heavy fire by the evil dragons, and the shockwave from the creature's attacks was more than enough to kill players. Yet Shifeng had left the relative safety of his hell tank, exposing himself to the evil dragon's attacks. Are they trying to surrender now that they know they can't win? Dust Edge joked when he saw someone exit one of the tanks. The Shadow Claw members were similarly surprised. They could not understand why someone would leave the safety of the tank and put themselves in death's path. The evil dragons could even instant kill a Tier 2 player. As everyone chatted about this reckless player quietly, Veiled Spirit watched with a somber expression. Commander, has something happened? A female cleric asked curiously when she noticed the ugly expression on Veiled Spirit's face. Crap. That is Black Flame. Veiled Spirit shouted after getting a closer look at the figure. She hadn't been able to get a clear look at him since the evil dragon's storm blades had kicked up dirt and dust around the hell tanks, but after watching carefully with squinted eyes, she recognized the player. Veiled Spirit could never forget Black Flame's appearance. After all, he was the sole reason that Shadowclaw's ambush on Zero Wing had failed so miserably. When they heard their commander's comment, the other Shadowclaw members grew nervous. In their minds, Black Flame's name was synonymous with monster. The man's most memorable feat was his ability to contend with a mythic monster by himself. Although he had only stood against the monster for a short moment, it was a display of strength that countless experts dreamed of commanding. Oh, he's Black Flame. Hearing Veiled Spirit's warning, Dust Edge squinted his eyes as he looked at Shifeng. Currently, Shifeng stood beside a hell tank, yet the man was utterly unfazed by the evil dragon's frightening aura. It was as if the evil dragons didn't even exist to Shifeng. Sure enough, he really is extraordinary. Unfortunately, even if Zero Wings Guild leader is here, there is no changing the guild's fate here. You two get rid of him. It's time to put an end to Black Flame's undefeated legend. Upon receiving Dust Edge's command, the two evil dragon players licked their lips in anticipation and fanaticism as they watched Shifeng. He was the most famous individual in the Or Empire. Almost no one throughout the Empire or Dark Soul didn't know the name Black Flame. When they had faced off against Black Flame during their previous battle with Zero Wing, their only thought had been of escape. However, this situation was different. They were now in possession of an evil dragon. They wielded strength that no player could hope to rival. Moreover, their superior life ratings elevated their senses to unprecedented levels. Both players had been some distance from the flowing water realm previously, but now not only had their combat powers reached that realm, but they were also nearly at the void realm. They were confident that they could easily defeat this legendary player. They were also extremely eager to fight Black Flame. Black Flame, hand over your life. The two evil dragon players flapped their wings and flew toward Shifeng, madness filling their eyes. Chapter 1876, Slaying Dragons in One Hit. Upon seeing the two evil dragon players flying toward Shifeng, the engineers controlling the hell tanks grew anxious. Protect the guild leader. Immediately, all 6 hell tanks fired their flame spears to hinder the movements of the two evil dragons. The 84 flame spears shot at the two evil dragons simultaneously. Normally, a Tier 2 player would have no choice but to wait for their death when faced with such an attack. However, dodging these attacks was no problem at all for the two Shadow Claw experts who possessed the physique of an evil dragon. Even if their huge bodies prevented them from evading all the flame spears, they could still rely on their claws to block the ones they couldn't dodge. Very quickly, the two evil dragon players weaved their way through the flame spears and arrived within 15 yards of Shifeng. They then simultaneously swung their massive paws at him, their silver claws tearing space apart as they sped toward Shifeng's head. Just as the two paws were about to hit Shifeng, the sacred sword in his hand suddenly flashed. In the next moment, a massive bolt of lightning cut the space before Shifeng in half, spatial tears appearing in its wake. This move was none other than Lightning Slash, the additional skill of Killing Ray. The moment their claws came into contact with the massive lightning bolt, the two evil dragon players felt as if a truck had just hit them. Their bodies went flying over a dozen yards before crashing heavily into the ground, cratering it. Impossible. Is he really a player? Dust Edge and the others gaped in shock when they saw this scene. They simply could not believe their eyes. Shifeng had actually sent 2 level 56, Tier 3 archaic species flying. The shock they felt from seeing this scene was akin to that from seeing an ant flipping over an elephant. The other dark players hiding within the Dark Witch's Tower were also rendered speechless at this scene. They didn't even know what had just happened. After all, everything was too quick. All they saw were the two evil dragons flying toward Shifeng, then a bright blue flash coming from Shifeng. Before they realized it, the two evil dragons were already tumbling backward. Is he a monster? The two evil dragon players wore looks of horror as they stared at Shifeng. A single slap from them had managed to kill a Tier 2 expert. However, when they tried to do the same thing to Shifeng, not only did they fail to kill him, but they also actually lost in a competition of strength. However, what the two players did not know was that Shifeng's strength already rivaled a great lords of the same level. Meanwhile, after continuously producing the forging components for the hell tanks for the past few days, he was now a level 69, Tier 2 sword master, 13 levels higher than the two evil dragon players. Lightning Slash also provided him with a 330% increase to his strength attribute. Although he still couldn't reach the standard of a mythic monster of the same level, his strength was more than enough to deal with level 56, Tier 3 archaic species. No, that's not right. He must have used a skill that increases his strength. He shouldn't be able to use such a skill often. As long as we work together to attack him, he'll definitely fall. That's right. How could a player possibly possess that much strength? He must have used a powerful skill. The two evil dragon players discussed quietly as they looked at Shifeng. Then they promptly split up and started circling to Shifeng's sides. A lot of powerful skills in God's domain provided a significant boost in attributes. Among these types of skills, berserk skills were the most common. However, there were also certain skills that exceeded one's imagination, such as taboo skills. Such skills were generally kept as a trump card and could not be used frequently. Since that was the case, all they needed to do was continue attacking Shifeng until he exhausted all of his skills. In any case, both of them had a maximum HP of 28 million. They were not afraid of fighting a battle of attrition against players at all. As for the attacks of the Hell Tanks, they only needed to be wary of the Hell Cannons. The flame spears posed no problems for them whatsoever. As the two evil dragon players closed in on Shifeng's sides and were about to launch another attack, Shifeng took out a magic scroll from his bag and activated it. Immediately, a golden-haired woman dressed in luxurious purple robes appeared before him. This woman was none other than Anna, Shifeng's personal guard. At this point she was already a level 85 Yin-Yang saint. As soon as Anna appeared, she lightly tapped the butt of her staff on the ground. Suddenly, a yin-yang barrier spread out with her as the center. Boom! The moment the two evil dragons collided with the yin-yang barrier, they felt a power rivaling Shifeng's lightning smash into their bodies. The two evil dragons went flying once again. Everyone fire at will. Shifeng commanded when he saw the evil dragons tumbling backward. After snapping out of their daze, the engineers simultaneously activated their respective Hell Tanks, Hell Cannon and Flame Spears. 6 crimson light balls and 84 flame spears flew at the fallen evil dragons right there and then. Boom. A series of explosions shook the battlefield. The HPs of the two evil dragons plummeted, falling below the 25% threshold. Feeling death approaching, the two evil dragon players automatically flapped their wings in an attempt to escape. Shifeng's and Anna's attacks might not pose a massive threat to them, but the attacks of the 6 Hell Tanks were simply too fierce. If the Hell Tanks landed another barrage on them, their lives would definitely be forfeit. You wish to run? Do you think you can so easily? Shifeng chuckled when he saw the two evil dragons trying to fly away. Right then, Anna finished chanting an incantation and now pointed her staff at the sky. In the next moment, pitch-black magic arrays appeared around the two evil dragons and shot out pitch-black spears. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black spears stabbed into the bodies of the evil dragons, sealing their movements and sapping their strength. This move was none other than the new overtier spell Anna had learned, Dark Lock. Due to Dark Lock, the two evil dragons were unable to move whatsoever. Their attributes had also decreased by 30%, which further reduced their already low HPs. On the verge of ordering the Hell Tanks to fire the killing blow on these two evil dragons, Shifeng suddenly felt a pulse coming from his bag. What's going on? Just as Shifeng was about to inspect his bag to check which item was producing the humming noise he was hearing right now, a broken sword suddenly flew out of his bag. This broken sword was none other than the evil god's inheritance, the weapon that Shifeng dreaded using. System: faint traces of the evil god's power detected. Do you wish to use the evil god's inheritance to absorb this power? Does this sword want me to use it to kill these evil dragons? As Shifeng looked at the broken sword, he could tell that the evil god's inheritance was riveted by the dying evil dragons. He then clicked to use the weapon in order to see what would happen if he killed the evil dragons with the evil god's inheritance. After Shifeng made his selection, the abyssal blade suddenly vanished from his hand, and taking its place was the evil god's inheritance. At this moment, despite Shifeng not having sacrificed any of his attributes, he was actually able to utilize the full power of the evil god's inheritance, the weapon causing his basic attributes to skyrocket. Although the entire process seemed to take a lot of time, in reality, only 3 seconds had passed since the evil god's inheritance started humming until now. Tightening his grip on the evil god's inheritance, Shifeng activated Instant Strike and appeared above the heads of the two evil dragons. He then sent a slash at them. Godslayer. Suddenly, 5 pitch-black sword lights devoured the two evil dragon players. Seen from afar, it looked as if a gigantic pitch-black mouth had swallowed the two evil dragons whole. As the pitch-black sword lights faded away, the two evil dragon players' HPs instantly fell to 0. Their bodies petrified into 2 stone sculptures, which then disintegrated into dust particles that scattered on the wind. A short while later, all traces of the two evil dragons had thoroughly disappeared from the battlefield. Chapter 1877, Second Evil God's Mark. As the 5 pitch-black sword lights disappeared, the two evil dragons disintegrated into dust and scattered with the wind. The players spectating from the distant watchtower only reacted after the two evil dragons had vanished. He died. Is Black Flame really a player? Everyone had gasped when they saw Shifeng's sudden attack. Although they understood that the two evil dragons had very little HP left, each had held on to over 1,000,000 HP, yet Shifeng had slain both with a single attack. The man's damage was horrific. When the dark players in hiding saw this, they abandoned any thought of killing Shifeng. They now considered the idea laughable and ignorant. It was no exaggeration to say that no player at this stage of the game could survive Shifeng's last attack. Unless they used an invulnerability skill, they would die in an instant if they tried to take on the swordsman. Furthermore, Shifeng had summoned a level 85 personal guard to his side. Anna had only moved her staff slightly, yet she had repelled both evil dragons. With such a personal guard, getting close to Shifeng would be utterly impossible. As for the person responsible for the evil dragon's deaths, he finally snapped out of his daze. What a powerful weapon. Not only was the Godslayer skill was much stronger than before, but the weapon had also granted a much higher boost to his physique. He could feel his strength rival that of a Tier 3 player. Gaining a Tier 3 physique was a qualitative transformation for any player. Once players' physiques reached Tier 2, their 5 senses would sharpen, but when they wielded a Tier 3 physique, their natural response time would also improve. Originally, only talented players possessed the ability. Although ordinary people could improve their neural response time by training, there was a limit. In addition, the training process would be intensely arduous, and very few people would be able to endure the hardships that awaited them. However, when players' physique reached Tier 3 in God's domain, their neural response time would improve. Although the improvement was a measly 10% or so, when applied in a high-speed battle between Tier 3 existences, the effects would be significant. For example, if a player with a Tier 2 physique could execute 10 attacks in a fixed time, then a player with a Tier 3 physique and the same basic attributes could execute 11 attacks. This additional attack would allow the player with the Tier 3 physique the chance of landing an attack on their opponent. By relying on the advantage of one extra attack, the player with the Tier 3 physique could eventually achieve victory. This was also why reaching Tier 3 was so difficult in God's domain. In the past, Tier 3 had been a threshold to determine whether a player was a true expert or not. Meanwhile, despite the evil god's inheritance being a shadow of its former self, equipping it had nearly boosted Shifeng's physique to the Tier 3 standard. One could easily imagine how powerful the evil god's inheritance was. It definitely wasn't something an ordinary legendary weapon could compare to. After killing the two evil dragons, the sound of a system notification reached Shifeng's ears. System: Evil God's inheritance has accumulated sufficient life force and recovered the second evil god's mark. Activating the second evil god's mark's ability. As the system notification ended, the evil god's inheritance began to transform. The blurry divine runes that covered the broken sword became much clearer. The ambient mana also avoided the broken sword due to these divine runes. Naturally, the broken sword's attributes had changed significantly. Evil God's inheritance, one-handed sword. A treasured sword that the evil god had once used. However, the sword had been destroyed in a battle, shattered into 3 pieces. Although the evil god's treasured sword had been destroyed, the evil god's power within remains intact. As long as one gathers all 3 fragments, it is possible to restore the sword to its past glory. This piece is the sword's broken hilt. By permanently sacrificing 8 points of all attributes, the user may temporarily use the sword's power. Although this sword has been severely damaged, it can still exert 1/10 of its original power. Hence, the evil dragon crystals he had created were not of sufficient quality. However, now that the evil god's temple had partnered with Blackwater and Dark Soul, he was confident that he could create even stronger evil dragons in the future. At that time, his evil dragons would fall as easily as they had today. Dust Edge then took out his own return scroll and teleported away from the Dark Witch's tower. When the remaining dark players realized that the situation had taken a turn for the worst, they promptly fled the town. This allowed the Hell Tanks to enter the town unhindered after they destroyed the defensive magic array. Meanwhile, only the town's Tier 3 NPCs posed any threat to the Hell Tanks. However, with how few Tier 3 NPCs the town had, the Hell Tanks endured the attacks as they destroyed the town's teleportation device and core magic array, which in turn destroyed the Dark Witch's tower. Once the Dark Witch's tower's core magic array had been obliterated, every player in the Or Empire received a system notification. Or Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for destroying the Dark Witch's tower. Rewarding 20,000 guild popularity and 1 basic teleportation device. The system announcement repeated 3 times, its content echoing in the minds of every player in the Or Empire. Chapter 1878. Dark Witch's Tower Destroyed. Or Empire Ancient Rock City. A large number of evil beasts and evil demons was currently battering Zero Wing's defensive magic array. Meanwhile, Zero Wing's members were doing their best to wipe out the monsters attacking them. The 200 miniature ballistas were practically firing non-stop. All kinds of explosions constantly echoed throughout the battlefield outside Ancient Rock City. As for the 5 mythic evil beasts, they were fighting a heated battle with the 3 heavily injured divine magic dragons. The battle between these 8 monstrosities had destroyed the terrain around them. No other monsters or players could get within 300 yards of these 8 mythic monsters. Meanwhile, the players spectating from a distance felt their blood boil as they watched the spectacular battle before them. Amazing! This war is simply amazing. Ancient Rock City really does have a lot of evil beasts and evil demons. With the battle having lasted this long, more than 50,000 monsters must have died already. Yet the number of monsters on the battlefield doesn't seem to have decreased in the slightest. It really makes you wonder what gave Zero Wing the courage to attack Ancient Rock City. Hey, Zero Wing is plenty amazing already. Can't you see how many monsters are attacking Zero Wing's army right now? If it were any other large guild in Zero Wing's place, they would have long since drowned in that sea of evil beasts and evil demons already. However, even until now, Zero Wing has yet to suffer a single casualty. Although Zero Wing hasn't suffered any casualties yet, the energy of its magic barrier should be close to depletion already. Once the barrier's energy runs out, Zero Wing's army will be doomed. After all, those evil beasts and evil demons are all level 60 and above, with plenty of level 70 plus great lords among them. Zero Wing's 100,000 players simply aren't enough to defeat all those monsters. Right now, the only thing I'm wondering is which will zero out first. Zero Wing's magic barrier or Ancient Rock City's monsters. Many of the spectating players had not expected the battle to escalate to such a point. The evil demons and evil beasts under Beast Emperor's command weren't existences that current players could go up against. However, by relying on its movement-type defensive magic array and miniature ballistas, Zero Wing had actually managed to fight Beast Emperor's forces to a standstill and even shattered Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. These were feats that were beyond most superpowers. The dark players that were originally planning on ambushing Zero Wing's army in particular, were now standing at the sides and quietly observing the battle, not daring to set foot onto the battlefield. After all, the fusillade of 200 miniature ballistas was simply too powerful. Each volley of arrows could easily kill several hundred evil beasts and evil demons, let alone players. However, while the independent players were surprised by Zero Wing's performance and had their opinions toward the guild changed drastically, the spectating upper echelons of the various superpowers remained very calm. In fact, some even reveled in Zero Wing's current predicament. Zero Wing sure is tenacious. Unfortunately, the outcome of this battle has already been decided. No matter how Zero Wing struggles, nothing will change. That movement-type defensive magic array costs a lot of magic crystals to sustain. However, there are millions of evil demons and evil beasts inside Ancient Rock City. At the end of the day, Zero Wing is simply too immature to try and use Beast Emperor as a stepping stone to rise to power in your empire. With this, Zero Wing should also understand its limitations. If it still insists on monopolizing the profits of the secret stone fortress, then we'll have no choice but to have Zero Wing disappear from the Your empire. However, Zero Wing has really given us a great surprise this time. I never thought that it could force Beast Emperor to use one of his trump cards. When we try to capture Ancient Rock City in the future, we'll have to think of a countermeasure for that attack first. The spectating upper echelons of the various superpowers sneered as they watched Zero Wing's members. Ordinary players might not know much about Zero Wing, but they did. They had done a thorough investigation of Zero Wing already. They even knew how many magic crystals it cost to use the movement-type defensive magic array each time. Hence, they were well aware that Zero Wing would not last very long against Beast Emperor. Although Zero Wing's performance had indeed surpassed their expectations, that still wasn't enough to convince them of Zero Wing's strength. While this level of strength was above average for a first-rate guild, to superpowers like them, be it the army of 100,000 elite and expert players or the 200 miniature ballistas, destroying these things would not be a problem if they really got serious. It was just that they did not wish to pay the enormous price for doing so, unless absolutely necessary. However, the situation right now was also slightly different. If it were simply removing Zero Wing from the Your empire, it was definitely doable. After all, there wasn't just one superpower putting pressure on Zero Wing, but multiple instead. After this battle, if Zero Wing still insisted on monopolizing the secret stone fortress, then it would surely end up getting annihilated by the combined forces of the superpowers. At that time, each superpower would only have to pay a small price to get the deed done. In such a case, they definitely wouldn't hesitate to do so. Big Sis Rain, this is bad. Although Zero Wing is trying to prove itself qualified to monopolize the secret stone fortress, according to the reports we've received thus far, several superpowers operating in the Your empire have already come to a secret agreement. As long as Zero Wing refuses to become a subordinate guild of one of them, they will remove Zero Wing from the Your empire. At that time, even if we try to intervene, the Great Pavilion Master will most likely stop us in fear of the alliance formed by those superpowers. Blue Phoenix, who was observing the battle at Ancient Rock City in person, reported to Phoenix Rain. According to Phoenix Rain's original plan, if Zero Wing really wasn't a match for Beast Emperor, then they would use the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's identity to back up Zero Wing. If they did that, the various superpowers might decide not to take action against Zero Wing. After all, individually, these superpowers couldn't take down the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion easily. Not to mention, if the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion gained access to the secret stone fortress via Zero Wing, the superpowers would have an even more difficult time dealing with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Zero Wing. However, it was a different story if these several superpowers cooperated. Even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would not dare to go up against multiple superpowers simultaneously. Just what is Black Flame trying to do? Phoenix Rain could not help but frown upon hearing Blue Phoenix's words. Meanwhile, inside Ancient Rock City, Beast Emperor likewise received news about the alliance of superpowers. Good. Very good. Beast Emperor's brows arched up in joy when he read the message he just received. Zero Wing, this is your retribution for trying to use me as a stepping stone. I want to see just how you plan on surviving in your empire now. Although he wished to destroy Zero Wing personally, not having to expend a single troop to destroy Zero Wing was also a good thing for him. Just as Beast Emperor was about to have his subordinates send the two mythic evil demons into battle as well, to put a quick end to the battle, the sound of a system announcement suddenly entered his ears. Or Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for destroying the Dark Witch's Tower. Rewarding 20,000 guild popularity and one basic teleportation device. The emotionless voice of the system caused Beast Emperor to fall into a daze. How is this possible? How could the Dark Witch's Tower possibly fall to Zero Wing? Beast Emperor instinctively refused to believe the system announcement. Although the Dark Witch's tower wasn't an impenetrable fortress, it had several hundred NPC soldiers protecting it, including level 100 Tier 3 NPCs. The town was also well equipped with defensive structures. Most importantly, several thousand dark players resided there. Let alone a 1,000-man team, even an army of 50,000 players wouldn't be able to take down the Dark Witch's tower. Moreover, he had even dispatched Dust Edge to defend the town. With the evil dragons that Dust Edge created using expert players, he could easily repel even a 1,000-man team of Tier 2 players. Meanwhile, Zero Wing didn't even have that many Tier 2 experts. At this moment, Beast Emperor wasn't the only person surprised by this outcome. Every player in the vicinity of Ancient Rock City was stunned by this announcement. Isn't Zero Wing attacking Ancient Rock City? How did the Dark Witch's tower become the one captured instead? Did the system make a mistake? Isn't the Dark Witch's tower a gathering point for dark players? I recall that there should be several hundred dark NPCs guarding it. How could it possibly be destroyed? What did Zero Wing do to the Dark Witch's tower? The upper echelons of the various superpowers were filled with confusion when they received the system announcement. However, after snapping out of their daze, they promptly had their subordinates investigate into the matter. The Dark Witch's tower might not be as sturdy as Ancient Rock City, but it was still a location that the superpowers were helpless against. Hence, they found it incredible that Zero Wing had managed to destroy the Dark Witch's tower. After all, Zero Wing's main army was clearly attacking Ancient Rock City right now. How could Zero Wing have any extra forces to spare to attack the Dark Witch's tower? Moreover, Zero Wing had even destroyed it. Chapter 1879 Qualifications to Establish a Foothold. The sudden news of the Dark Witch's tower's destruction stupefied the dark players at Ancient Rock City. The Dark Witch's tower is gone? What's going on? Pathless frowned when he received the system announcement. Shouldn't Shadow Claw be over there? The Dark Witch's tower was an important stronghold for dark players like him. It was also the only teleportation point in the Or Empire's southeastern region, serving as an important foundation for dark players to take control of this region. Losing the Dark Witch's tower meant that dark players would have much more difficulty operating in the Empire's southeastern region in the future. After all, with how large the Or Empire was, traveling around the Empire without teleportation points was very inconvenient. Hence, Dark Soul and the other dark powers normally stationed some experts to guard the Dark Witch's tower. After hearing that Zero Wing had sent a 1,000-man team toward the town, Pathless had even made a point to instruct Veiled Spirit to bring some of Shadow Claw's experts over. Despite that, he was actually being told that the Dark Witch's tower was no more. At this moment, Pathless felt as if the system was playing a joke on him. Veiled Spirit had brought 300 experts with her to the Dark Witch's tower. Even if she didn't receive any help from the other dark players there with the town's defensive structures and NPCs, she could easily fend off a team of 1,000 players. Pathless immediately contacted Veiled Spirit to find out what exactly had happened at the Dark Witch's tower. With the loss of the Dark Witch's tower, Dark Soul would have a much more difficult time dealing with Zero Wing's Silverwing town. This unexpected development might even severely affect the Alliance's plans. The various superpowers also launched their own investigations into this matter, some even offering to purchase the relevant information at high prices. They were very curious to find out just how Zero Wing had destroyed the gathering point that they had been helpless to do anything against all this time. The lucrative offers very quickly attracted the attention of the dark players that had fled the Dark Witch's tower. They promptly sold the battle videos they recorded to the superpowers. After watching the battle at the Dark Witch's tower, the superpowers were thoroughly rendered speechless. Although the battle at the Dark Witch's tower was not as stirring as the one at Ancient Rock City, it displayed Zero Wing's frightening combat power and potential. 6 Hell Tanks had actually managed to slaughter 2,000 dark players without taking any damage. The destructive power the Hell Tanks possessed could practically rival that of the Magic Tower. Meanwhile, the battle against the evil dragons afterward was even more jaw-dropping. Despite being Tier 3 archaic species, the 2 evil dragons had actually failed to inflict any noticeable damage on the Hell Tanks. Even for the various superpowers, This was the first time they had heard of or seen such a frightening war weapon. The Hell Tank boasted both heaven-defying destructive power and defensive capabilities, which would make it an absolute nightmare on a battlefield. Of course, dealing with the Hell Tanks wasn't exactly impossible. Only the cost would be exorbitant. For example, Tier 4 large-scale destruction magic scrolls. Attacks at the Tier 4 standard would definitely be effective against the Hell Tanks. However, the question was, how effective would they be? How many of such magic scrolls would be needed to destroy a Hell Tank? Even superpowers like themselves had great difficulty getting their hands on Tier 4 magic scrolls, not to mention Tier 4 large-scale destruction magic scrolls. These things were treated as their guild's foundations. They were tools that should not be used casually. Moreover, the most frightening aspect about the Hell Tank was that, aside from being useful in siege battles, it would also be effective in guerrilla warfare. 6 Hell Tanks could effortlessly slaughter over 2,000 expert players. In the future, when Zero Wing came across ambushes involving hundreds or thousands of players, it could deploy just one Hell Tank to fend off these ambushes. With this, trying to whittle down Zero Wing's strength by ambushing its members would become much more difficult. As for conducting ambushes on the scale of parties or small teams, such attacks would simply be a waste of time and resources, as they would not cause Zero Wing any substantial damage. So this is the trump card Black Flame has kept hidden? Truly amazing. Blue Phoenix was filled with envy after she finished watching the video of the battle at the Dark Witch's Tower. The 6 Hell Tanks were akin to 6 mobile magic towers. It was no wonder Zero Wing did not need any direct assistance from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. One could say that, with these Hell Tanks, Zero Wing had the qualifications to establish a foothold in the Or Empire. Although the various superpowers operating in the Or Empire had banded together, there was still a limit to the number of forces each superpower was willing to dispatch. They would not send their main armies to fight Zero Wing in a frontal confrontation. After all, Silverwing Town's defenses were no laughing matter. Even if they could capture the town, the price of doing so was not one that the various superpowers were willing to pay. At best, they would dispatch some members to conduct guerrilla warfare against Zero Wing or economic wars. The appearance of the Hell Tanks threw a wrench into the various superpowers' plan of dealing with Zero Wing using guerrilla warfare. As for economic warfare, that was even more impossible. Zero Wing possessed Silverwing Town, Stone Forest Town and Zero Wing City. So long as the safety of these 3 money printing machines remained unthreatened, Zero Wing would not lack for income. Now that the various superpowers no longer had any means of dealing with Zero Wing without paying a huge cost, they would naturally give up on targeting Zero Wing altogether. After all, the superpowers were not actually friendly with each other. Every one of them had their own agenda. Unless they bore some deep-seated hatred for Zero Wing, or one of these superpowers lost their mind, none of them would persecute Zero Wing at all costs. Damn it! How did Zero Wing get these tanks? Nine Dragons Emperor frowned as he read the report in his hands. Immediately have someone look into this. Find out how Zero Wing managed to obtain these tanks regardless of the cost. He felt true jealousy toward Zero Wing at this point. When he looked at the Hell Tanks, it was as if the doors to a whole new world opened up to him. While expert players were important, tanks could also play a huge role in future struggles in God's domain. Understood. Martial Dragon nodded before turning around to leave. In reality, Nine Dragons Emperor wasn't alone in having such thoughts. Every major power that had watched the battle at the Dark Witch's Tower basically had the same thought as well. The appearance of the Hell Tank signaled the end of the era of numerical strength. The upper echelons of every major power had immediately ordered their subordinates to conduct a thorough investigation into the Hell Tank. Meanwhile, over at Ancient Rock City, Zero Wing's members grew ecstatic after seeing the system announcement. They never thought that their guild had actually managed to destroy a dark gathering point without anybody finding out about it prior to succeeding. The Dark Witch's Tower was a dark gathering point that even the various superpowers were helpless against. Moreover, now that the Dark Witch's Tower was no more, they would have a much easier time operating in the vicinity of Silverwing Town. The guild leader did it? Aqua Rose could not help but smile when she saw the system notifications. Since that is the case, start retreating. With the destruction of the Dark Witch's Tower, Blackwater and Beast Emperor had lost a crucial tool against Zero Wing. Without the threat of the Dark players, Silverwing Town's development would recover to its peak. After including the benefits offered by the Secret Stone Fortress, Zero Wing would definitely be able to compete against Blackwater in the Ore Empire. After Aqua Rose gave the command to retreat, Zero Wing's members started slowly withdrawing from the battlefield. "Boss, Zero Wing seems to be retreating. Should we give chase?" Wind Hunter asked in a quiet tone. Chapter 1880 Descend. Hearing Wind Hunter's question, Beast Emperor could not help but turn towards the Blackwater members and Dark players watching the battle outside of the city. When Zero Wing had begun its retreat, a hunger to take action swept through the two groups of players. Although the movement-type defensive magic array protected Zero Wing's army, it could only withstand up to Tier 3 attacks. Tier 4 attacks would exceed the magic array's tolerance and shatter the array. Although the 3 divine magic dragons had the 5 mythic evil beasts tied up right now, he still had 2 mythic evil demons on reserve. Following which, Beast Emperor gazed at the many destroyed buildings behind him with a cold glint flashing in his eyes. He felt his heart ache as he looked at the destroyed buildings. Although the buildings had only been basic constructions, they were still important for nurturing evil beasts and evil demons. It would cost him a lot of evil gods' temple contribution points to repair them all. Meanwhile, Zero Wing, the cause of this destruction, wanted to get away from the battle without suffering a single casualty. "Zero Wing. First you used me as a diversion to attack the Dark Witch's tower, and now you want to disengage safely. Do you think you own this place?" Beast Emperor sneered at Aqua Rose and the others' retreating figures. "Mobilize all mythic and Grand Lord ranked evil demons. Send in Elder Whales. I want to teach Black Flame how foolish his decision was to send an army up against Ancient Rock City." If he allowed Zero Wing City to leave Ancient Rock City unscathed after this incident, both he and the Evil God's Temple would become a laughingstock throughout the Ore Empire. He could not allow that to happen. Not only did he intend to display the might of the Evil God's Temple before Zero Wing, but before every major power watching this battle as well. "Are we really going to mobilize Elder Whales?" Wind Hunter gasped when he heard Beast Emperor's command. He hadn't thought that Beast Emperor would involve Der Whales, the branch temple's Tier 4 NPC in Ancient Rock City. Elder Whales was the strongest trump card Ancient Rock City had at the moment. They had also gone through great lengths to secure a single opportunity to request the NPC's assistance. Initially, they had planned to save the opportunity for their assault on Silverwing Town. He had never expected Beast Emperor to use it here. "Of course. I want a Black Flame to learn how foolish it was to send a measly army of 100,000 players to attack my city. If we destroy Zero Wing's army here, the guild's hold over the Secret Stone Fortress will crumble," Beast Emperor said, a hint of madness in his eyes. Although mobilizing Elder Whales now would ruin his original plans, destroying 100,000 of Zero Wing's elite and expert players would land a heavy blow to the enemy guild. This defeat might even be enough to encourage the various superpowers to strike against Zero Wing. "Understood," Wind Hunter said, clearly eager. He couldn't wait to see the enemy's expressions when they were dragged to the pits of hell only moments after celebrating a victory. Meanwhile, Blackwater's members quietly observed the battle outside of Ancient Rock City from a safe distance. "Commander Scar, Zero Wing has begun its retreat. When are we going to make our move?" "Finally. This is our Heavenly Eagle Legion's chance to show the Vice Guild leader our worth. I don't think there's a need to wait until both sides are severely injured. We can simply charge in and slaughter Zero Wing's members. Isn't it just a defensive magic array? That Beast Emperor really is useless. He still hasn't destroyed it." The 20-plus players behind Snow Scar, a Tier 2 berserker, were growing impatient after such a long wait. If Phoenix Rain were present, she would have been astonished to see these players. Not only were they all level 56+ Tier 2 players, but they were also famous experts in the Iron Empire. Originally, they had either been known independent players or top-ranked experts from first-rate guilds. Some were even dark players. Overall, everyone in the Iron Empire was familiar with these players. They all wielded a level of power that even first-rate guilds were helpless against. Some of them even had special means that could cause the various superpowers headaches. Yet these 20-plus players had gathered here. Moreover, they had joined Blackwater. Why wouldn't this be shocking? Let's wait for a bit. Ancient Rock City should make its move soon. If the situation hasn't changed in the next few minutes, it won't be too late for us to attack, Snow Scar said, smiling at the restless group of players around him. Honestly, even he felt somewhat powerless against this group. These people usually acted like lawless criminals in the Iron Empire since so few players weren't capable of challenging them. A few of these players even had the strength to rival him. If they decided to rampage, he wasn't confident that he could stop them. Only Wuxia was capable of truly controlling these madmen. However, she was also the reason that this bunch had joined the Heavenly Eagle Legion. After hearing Snow Scar's decision, the other Heavenly Eagle Legion members fell silent, returning their attention to Zero Wing's army. As Zero Wing's army organized its retreat from the battlefield, over a dozen figures flew out of Ancient Rock City. Upon seeing these figures, the watching crowd, all of whom had assumed that the battle had reached its end, were stupefied. What's going on? Why is a Tier 4 NPC here? There's not just the Tier 4 NPC. 2 mythic evil demons have joined the battle as well. I knew Beast Emperor wouldn't let Zero Wing escape. This is going to be interesting. Beast Emperor is too ruthless. Zero Wing will suffer a massive loss this time. Beast Emperor still had so much power hidden. The spectating crowd was stunned as they watched the dozen or so figures rapidly approach Zero Wing's force. Even the spectating superpowers were astonished. Although there were only a dozen or so new arrivals, the group had enough combat power to capture a guild town. After a moment of silence, Wales, a level 80 Tier 4 NPC, appeared above Zero Wing's army. He then pointed his staff at the sky above him. Offenders of the evil god, the punishment for your crimes is death. Suddenly, countless small magic arrays appeared in the sky before silvery gray arrows descended like a storm. Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell, Death's Twilight. As the silver arrows rained down, the defensive magic array's energy reserves rapidly depleted. After a short moment, the defensive magic array's energy reserves were empty. Aqua Rose hadn't even had time to replenish the reserves before the magic array shattered. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 2 level 80 mythic evil demons and the dozen or so Grand Lord-ranked evil demons flew towards Zero Wing's army. Beast Emperor is quite ruthless. We merely destroyed Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. Does he really need to send a Tier 4 NPC after us? Blackie felt an intense pressure weigh down on him as he looked up at Wales. The man's aura was even stronger than that of a Tier 4 monster, and despite standing so far away from the NPC, Blackie felt stifled. Sure enough, guild leader's guess had been correct. Beast Emperor won't let us get away so easily. Aqua Rose looked at Wales with a bitter smile. She had to admit that Beast Emperor was a formidable foe. There was a reason that the various superpowers had been powerless against Ancient Rock City. Aside from the large number of evil beasts and evil demons under his command, Beast Emperor also had so many powerful trump cards. Elder Wales, please punish these offenders and transform them into nutrients for our evil demon army. Wind Hunter said, laughing as he pointed at Zero Wing's army. 100,000 elite and expert players. The corpses of these players would elevate the Evil God's Temple's evil demon army to a whole new level. They'd be able to create far more mythic evil demons in the future. As soon as Wind Hunter finished speaking, Wales began to chant an incantation. Meanwhile, the Mythic and Grand Lord-ranked evil demons charged for the movement-type defensive magic array in an attempt to destroy the barrier around Zero Wing's army, preventing it from erecting another. It seems that there's no other way. Since he won't let us leave, we'll drag him to hell with us. Aqua Rose sighed. She then pulled an ancient magic scroll and a beautiful crystal from her bag. This magic scroll was none other than the Tier 4 continuous use magic scroll, Vulcan's Sigh. As for the beautiful crystal, it was an elemental source Melancholic Smile had acquired with great difficulty after scouring through the various kingdoms and empires. Source of blazing fire. Vulcan's kin descend. However, just as the Blackwater members and Dark players were preparing to rush down on Zero Wings members, a deafening roar suddenly came from the fiery plains created by the meteor shower. Following the first roar, more roars shook the battlefield one after another. Then, the meteors that landed on the battlefield started transforming. The flames surrounding the meteors grew considerably. As for the meteors themselves, they took on a humanoid form. In the blink of an eye, over 500 flaming giants appeared on the battlefield. Even the weakest among these flame giants was a level 75 Great Lord that was 10 meters tall. Meanwhile, the majority of the flame giants on the battlefield were 20-meter-tall Grand Lords. There were also 4 60-meter-tall mythic flame giants. These 4 mythic flame giants looked like 4 flaming mountains as they stood on the battlefield. Everywhere these mythic flame giants passed became a sea of flames. Lava also flowed down from their bodies continuously, turning the area within 100 yards of the mythic flame giants into a lava field. Any evil beasts and evil demons caught within this lava field got burned and lost chunks of HP over time. After taking shape, these flame giants slaughtered the evil beasts and evil demons before them and charged straight towards ancient Rock City. The level 83 mythic flame giants in particular were simply unstoppable, sending even the mythic evil beasts flying with a single slap. Meanwhile, the Lord-ranked evil beasts caught within the lava fields formed by the mythic flame giants lost HP at a rate visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, several hundred evil beasts and evil demons had been killed. The battlefield had been turned into a sea of flames as well. It was no exaggeration to say that this legion of flame giants was disaster incarnate. Damn it! Stop them! Quick! We must not let them enter the city. Beast Emperor shouted, his complexion turning deathly pale when he saw the flame giants charging toward ancient Rock City. The flame giants' bodies were massive. If they entered ancient Rock City, the destruction they would cause would be unimaginable. This was especially true for the mythic flame giants. Their entry would spell disaster for the city. Damn it! Zero Wing, just you wait. The evil god's temple will flatten you sooner or later. Wind Hunter bellowed as he glared at Zero Wing's army. Gnashing his teeth, he promptly controlled all his evil demons and evil beasts to deal with the flame giants. Ancient Rock City was the evil god's temple's foothold in the Ore Empire. They could not afford to lose it no matter what. Although he did not think that the Flame Giant Legion could destroy the entire city, even partial destruction was not a loss they could afford. Following which, under Wind Hunter's command, Whales and the 2 mythic evil demons moved to hinder the mythic flame giants. As for the other evil beasts and evil demons, Wind Hunter tasked them with dealing with the other flame giants. The number of monsters targeting Zero Wings members decreased drastically. Using this opportunity, Aqua Rose activated the movement-type defensive magic array once again. Immediately after, she had the army beat a hasty retreat. At the same time, she also had Flying Shadow and the others recall the divine magic dragons to support the army's withdrawal. Right now, the Flame Giant Legion was more than enough to handle the front line. This sudden development gave the players seeking to attack Zero Wings members pause. With the 3 divine magic dragons guarding Zero Wings' army, no player could poke their nose into this battle. Moreover, Zero Wings' defensive magic array was up again. There were also the 200 miniature ballistas continuously firing exploding arrows. "We're retreating," Snow Scar said, sighing as he sent a glance at Zero Wings' receding army. But the other members of the Heavenly Eagle Legion felt unreconciled as they looked at Snow Scar. "Do you think you can handle those 3 divine magic dragons?" Snow Scar asked as he eyed the 20-plus players behind him. They might be able to do something about the defensive magic array and 200 miniature ballistas, but they would be helpless against the 3 divine magic dragons. Although the divine magic dragons were heavily injured as they were controlled by players, the combat power they possessed was still above that of ordinary mythic monsters. Not to mention, with the divine magic dragons' basic attributes, all they needed was 1 hit to kill current players. "If we use our trump card, what will those 3 divine magic dragons amount to?" a white-clad Tier 2 summoner argued. "Trump card? Are you all going to expose our Heavenly Eagle Legion's greatest secret without the Vice Guild leader's permission?" Snow Scar asked as he shot a cold glare at the Tier 2 summoner. Everyone present promptly fell silent. Relax. You'll have plenty of opportunities to perform in the future. Not to mention we got to see Zero Wing's trump cards this time. A guild that has its trump cards exposed is no different from a beast that has lost its claws and fangs. Zero Wing is no longer a threat to us, Snow Scar said, a faint smile appearing on his face as he eyed the distant Zero Wing army. When Zero Wing's army completed its retreat from the battlefield, the battle at Ancient Rock City had also come to an end. Although Zero Wing had failed to capture Ancient Rock City, it had managed to destroy the city's defensive magic array and retreat entirely unscathed. Most importantly, Zero Wing had also destroyed the Dark Witch's Tower, an important gathering point for dark players in the Or Empire. After the battle ended, news of it spread like crazy to the kingdoms and empires neighboring the Or Empire. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.